Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Rogue Ways. This week, I am flitting about the Astral, doing happy dances in the constantly twilit backdrops of eternity to welcome this incredibly talented, deeply wise, and especially conscious cohort who will guide us gently through the tantalizingly unrestricted realm of mind and more. So it is with great pleasure that I introduce to you all Misha the Dreamer. Misha is our queen of the astral and hidden, a traveler in other realms, and the most chill and bluntly honest person to refresh the waters in a long-ass time. Misha, how are the travels treating you?
Very well, thank you.
Thank you for being here. We have Jeff, the PD Wheatstraw, aka Darkside, joins us tonight as well. Jeff is an artist, a music maker, a dreamer of the dream, and a legend in his own mind and in mine. Jeff, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And finally, Alan the Accomplished. Alan is a psychologist and counsels people through death and bereavement, is a published author, a Buddhist priest, has had 5 near-death experiences, and hunted ghosts with Chris Boris. Am I saying that name right?
Definitely. Thank you.
All right. And Alan, thank you for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thank you for offering me to come in. Thank you.
Yes. So the pointless question of the episode today is, if you are going to implement one change for each human on Earth that you believe would propel us toward utopic futures, what would you implement and why? We will start with Alan.
Most definitely mindfulness. Being in the present moment, stop focusing on the past and the future so much and worry about being present with yourself, your connection with others, and the ability to focus intently upon what you're trying to accomplish, and in and of that, create the future you do wish to manifest, be it utopian.
Thank you. What do you think, Jeff?
Similar in line with that, mine was personal responsibility. I feel like Oprah said it best when she said, please be responsible for the energy that you bring into this place. You should be responsible for the energy you bring into every place, everywhere you go. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. You know, I think if everybody just looked inside themselves for a couple of minutes before they respond instead of react, I think we'd all be better off.
Beautifully put. In fact, I'm going to steal that and bring it into my classroom. Be responsible, or be aware of the energy that you're bringing. I like it.
Awesome.
What do you think, Misha?
Mine's kind of similar to that. I was going to say, use your goddamn free will. Like a non-choice is still a choice.
Excellently put. I guess we're all on the same line here, because I was going to say just emotional self-awareness, which I think is taken for granted and is actually a lot harder than it sounds. But just being emotionally aware of the emotions that you have at any given moment, or becoming as aware as you can of those things. And man, if we tied all those together, like blam, society fixed.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to pause here and we're going to do the white wave before we dig in. So we're going to choose our listener to send our best intentions to. We're going to randomly select this person who submitted their intention for all of us. So our friends listening live, whether you're listening and if you're listening later on YouTube or Stitcher or iTunes, or through the CoreySharman.com website, and all of us here on the show today, including our panelists, we're going to visualize this person's selected intention. It's like a little karmic burst of good love to the listener. And last time we sent some love to Brett Saylor for some good night's sleep, and it worked instantly. That night he had a better night's sleep than he had had for the past few days or whatnot. So I also
still asleep now.
Yeah. So I also have the intention meditation group, and we have like 100% success rate. So I really believe in the power of intention, and I think it's even more powerful when we're all doing it together like this. So we're going to continue that trend of success, and I'm going to ask Jeff to roll a dice for us so we can randomly select our listener.
2.
All right, so we are going to visualize. So Rico Sutton submitted that he has a dog that he walks with cancer, and it's not necessarily for the dog to, we're not going to necessarily visualize the dog getting healthy, but more for the owner to find the strength and the wisdom that she will need in order to help the dog to get healthy. So we're going to visualize the owner of the dog, strong and wise. And I'm going to use my drum to help send our energies out. So anyone listening, visualizing the owner with strength and wisdom, And we'll start now. All right. Thank you for everyone who participated in our good, true, and beautiful intentions for the owner of that dog. And thank you for Rico for submitting that beautiful intention on someone else's behalf. So we're going to get into it. Our topic tonight of dreams and consciousness. We're kind of tying them together because they are intricately connected. But we're going to begin with personal roots of where each of our listeners started. So I wanted just to know the beginning, if you guys can remember, of what really sent you down a path of thinking deeply about or experimenting with dreams or consciousness. You want to take one or the other or tie them together as you wish. So who wants to start with their beginnings?
I think I'll go because I probably have the longest history because I feel like I've literally always been surrounded by just weirdness. Like the weirdest things would happen to me and I'd have the oddest experiences and then have to go and try to figure out why that happened or how that happened or if did it really happen? Did I hallucinate it? Did most of my experiences I measure against somebody else's interpretation. And that I think just started me on the path. I mean, I was a little kid seeing people dancing on my radiator, right? My parents would turn the lights on, they'd disappear, they'd turn the lights back off, and people would show back up. They weren't menacing. They were just there having, doing a little pilgrim dance or something. I don't know. That's my entire life. Always.
So literally as long as you can remember.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Next.
I guess I'll go next. So for me, I guess it started probably when I was around 2. Just, like Jeff was like pretty much all the time around me. I remember one of my first dreams were like mainly nightmares. And I was also a sleepwalker. So I would have the nightmares and try to like wake up from the nightmares, but I couldn't because it's pretty much impossible to wake up from REM, right? But somehow or another, I started sleepwalking too. And then I ended up getting into a bunch of sleep studies at like children's hospitals. And then eventually on like summer times, like I had an uncle who was in the Army. So during summer times, I would sometimes go to like where his base was in New Mexico and take part in sleep studies there as well.
So how old were you when you started doing the sleep studies?
I started doing sleep studies probably when I was like 3 or 4.
Wow.
Then all the way up until, and then luckily I grew out of sleepwalking by the time I was 12. So I would say really between the time I was like 4 to like 10, I was involved in a lot of sleep studies.
So, and then you're saying that you went to your uncle's base?
Yeah, so my uncle was in the Army, and he was stationed first in New Mexico. I'm not sure exactly where I was located. I just remember it was a lot of rocks, and it was pretty rocks, and I liked going there. And then also in Arizona, there's like another base that was there, and I would spend the summer times with him. But their basic thing was like since the sleepwalking wasn't happening during REM stages, and then I would have like memories where they would wake me up because that's what in sleep studies that's what they do. Like you sleepwalk and they're like, what are you doing? And if you can explain to them what you're doing, they're like, oh, that's weird because you're not supposed to be dreaming during this part of your sleep. So then that's when my sleep studies got like a little bit weirder.
Well, and I think a lot of people would point out the connection between the military and interest in this area could be interesting. And do you feel like that had any effect on your experience in your life?
Yeah, I have really weird stories based on that, but that's another show.
All right.
It's a whole other can of freaking worms.
Next time. Cool. Anything else you wanted to add about how you kind of started this path?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say just the nightmares. having the night terrors kind of forced me to know I was dreaming and that I couldn't wake up. So then that's when I started lucid dreaming. So I started lucid dreaming very early on as a way to try and control my dreams and control the things that were like attacking me or try and get away. Like one of the things I would do is I would like think about people. Like I had a really huge crush on like people from Duran Duran. So I'm like, oh, John Taylor's gonna come and save me. So like
cute.
I would pull that person in, and then like, but then they would end up being like fodder. So basically, the bad guys would just like kill them, and then that would give me a little bit more time to get away. So
that's awesome. What about you, Alan?
So how I got started into the aspects of consciousness and dreams. Well, the focus on consciousness is really the root core of what Buddhist teachings are, and everything basically just extends from that. And I started studying Buddhism at age 13 when I discovered an ex-Shaolin monk living in my hometown in the woods who had escaped communist China, and a bunch of us kids began studying Kung Fu with him, and by proxy meditation. And since then, I just continued focusing on meditating on a daily basis and disciplining the body and mind together. And within that context, just beginning study everything I could get my hands on that involved a material, which is, again, just an aspect of training the mind and body and directing intent, and just continued since then, waterfalling into more and more subjects and kind of intertwining them together and coming to understand how they all interlink and what's kind of the common thread they all have.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So yours sounds like Jeff and Misha were more like experiential. Their life kind of, they had experiences, they wanted to go find the answers, but yours was more, you found some practices that led you into thinking more deeply about these things.
Yeah, I had an interest before that. Even at age 6 or 7, I was already renting out from the library all the books I could find on ghosts, the paranormal, and especially the world mythologies. And I actually found a little report card from 4th grade, and my mom was concerned that I was getting out too advanced books, but I loved the pictures so much. So I already enjoyed the imagery and visualizations early on. And really my first big paranormal experience was actually at age 11. And so at that point, I realized there's more that's going on than meets the eye, and just continued the path after that.
Awesome. I'm more on the side of the experiential too. Like I had some really weird dream experiences early on, but one of the ones that stands out was more in my teenage years. And I had like a fully precognitive dream where I had a dream, and at the time it seemed nonsensical. And then the next day, as I was living through my life, each part of the dream came true in order. Like the dream was pretty symbolic, but I had like a dolphin jumping over the moon. And then there was like a fire that I put out with my feet, and this little blonde boy running around on a dock. And then in the next day, like very, very random things happened that led me to a dock where there was a little blonde boy, and he handed me a book that he wanted me to read. And there was a dolphin jumping over the moon on the book. Wow. And then I went to a party, and a car came up and parked on some long grass, and it started a fire, which I went over and put out with my feet. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, how does that happen? So like, clearly the world is not what we are told it is. If I can have a precognitive dream and it can come true. And then I also, like, similar time period, had a really extended deja vu. You know, we all have kind of deja vu that's kind of quick and little. And a lot of times it's stuff that you can't really put your finger on, like, why do I feel like I've experienced this before? But I was actually randomly in Ireland, and I had this literally like 2 or 3 minute long period of time where I knew every single thing that was going to happen. I knew the people who were going to walk around the corner, and what the person was going to say next, and how they were going to move their hand, and super, super detailed. And I didn't have a clear memory of having dreamt it, but I just knew what was going to happen. And so again, I had this very clear example that things are not what they seem and that consciousness is something more than what I think a lot of people think it is. Maybe nobody knows maybe what it even is.
Ireland's one of those weird places where it's like it feels like at any moment you can just step into another world. I remember one of the last time I was there, I went on a ghost tour in Dublin. You know, normally they're like bullshit ghost tours or like,
yeah.
And then I didn't realize this, but this guy actually took us to like a real place. So I get to the place and I'm just like, oh my God, right? And he's like, oh, do you notice something? I'm like, yes. And he's like, oh yeah, this is a Hellfire Club. They killed like a bunch of little kids over in that corner, and like, I'm like, oh my God. But it's so strange that like pretty much everywhere I went in Ireland, like you turn one street and it feels normal, and then like the next street, you're like, am I really here? New Orleans is kind of like that too. It's like, you know, kind of trippy.
It's like steeped in spirit or something. Like I don't even know how to explain it. Like,
it just feels like the people always like say stuff like feels like the veil is thin. Like there's certain places I feel like the veil is very, very thin.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Like, is that veil being thin like a factor of something physical that's happening in the earth, and there's like ley lines converging there, and that's why, or is it more like what Rupert Sheldrake talks about, morphic resonances, and maybe like so many people have practiced or thought about or focused on the spiritual in that location that it's just like easier to access.
Yeah, like punching up, like people were just like kind of punching holes or something.
Yeah. Cool. So as you guys were kind of getting into thinking about these types of things or experiencing these types of things, what sorts of like learning processes did you kind of go through on this path to awareness of consciousness and dreaming? Jeff wants to start, I can tell.
Okay, I'll start then. Let's see who's going to start. I think part of it for me is I had to teach myself to lucid dream, and I don't do it very well or very successful, but that was part of the process. Also learning to meditate and just accepting the reality that energy thoughts are real things. They're not abstract concepts. You know, energy has a density, thoughts have a density, and these things have a real effect on the world. And I had to come to grips with that and learn how to use that and how to not use it and how to, you know, just navigate around it. So there's a lot of that.
Do you have any examples of like a learning curve that you had to go through?
Well, definitely like the lucid dream thing. I had to try that a few times to even get it to partially work. But I know one of the things they teach is that if you look at your hands in a dream, if you can force them to stretch and distort, then you can actually train yourself to lucid dream. So I've done that probably 2 or 3 times, but the weird part, the irony is that, you know how in the movie The Matrix, when Morpheus tells Neo is like about the world not being real, it takes him to the top of the building and it's like, jump to the other building. It's like, no way, that's never going to work. The first time I lucid dreamed, that was the first thing I did. I ran out of a window and clear out. I jumped off or whatever, like 5th floor or something, and just sort of floated down. And like, this is awesome. Let me try to jump back up, but I can never really quite make it. And I woke up, so...
And do you think the reason why you couldn't quite make it is because somewhere in your brain it's still convinced that you can't do that even in like dream world?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, because even before that, I was like, it was a ridiculous dream. I won't even get into that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What do you think, Misha?
I think in general, like dreams are really important, even if you're not able to lucid dream or do journeying or anything. Like just listening to your subconscious, it's so important. So that's why I always like, you know, suggest that people keep a dream journal, even if your dreams are really fucked up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, especially if your dreams are fucked up, because they're kind of fun to go back and read, and like maybe something that you were dreaming about like 2 years ago didn't make sense at the time, but then rereading over it, you're like, oh, that's what that meant, you know? And that's why I always think, even like, you know, because I'm in some other groups too, where it's like people were trying to like astral travel, but I think really like lucid dreaming has more potential in helping the individual than astral travel, because with lucid dreaming you can work through all of your issues, all of your problems, all of your like learnings. Like I remember one of the first times when like I started playing sports, and I was trying to figure out how to do, I think it was like an overhead snatch or something. So like it takes a lot of practice to do that. But then I was also doing it in my dream too, which kind of helped my mind, figure out how to do it, so that the next day when it was time for me to do it, it seems like, I was like excelled by like leaps and bounds, basically, because I kind of set it aside in terms of like making my body do the work, and then just kind of like let my subconscious mind kind of work out.
So that's an actual technique that even people, I don't know why Silicon Valley is always the example, like who actually gives a shit what people in Silicon Valley are doing, but for, in Silicon Valley, they're using dreaming and visualizations to practice things because it's shown that will improve your abilities. It's just like practicing in the physical.
Yeah.
But do you want to share with us, Misha, what your idea is and the difference between the astral and lucid dreaming?
How do I explain that? So I would say my difference is lucid dreaming is solely within yourself. So it's basically you deciding, okay, I'm going to make this change. I'm going to do this and I'll put that there. Astral is you're kind of in a shared space.
Okay.
So some things you can change, but some things you can't because other people, you're not in a bubble. So other people were there as well.
Yeah. Okay. So one's internal and one is external. Okay.
But I mean, you can like astral or lucid can definitely be used as a springboard to astral, because when you're lucid, you realize that you're dreaming, and so you can be like, oh, well, maybe I can go someplace else.
Mm-hmm.
So
cool. So Alan, what about you? What is part of your process of learning initially down this path?
Well, originally the lucid ability came in my teens when the one day was dreaming, and for some reason I felt the desire to look up, and when I did, it crossed my mind that I should be seeing the inside of my brain because I'm dreaming. And I know that it sounds funny, but that's what was going through my mind. And then all of a sudden it snapped, and it's like, that's not really physically accurate. And from there, it just progressed into morphing everything that was around me on a continuous basis. And at that age, it was mostly vulgar sexuality dreams that I was bringing to mind. But I also used it to do other things like teach myself to fly and various things along those lines, which was a little unnerving because I had a fear of heights. But that was one way to help myself conquer it, by going higher and higher. And then as I got older, the dreams took on a more educational and explorative manner, to where in the last 10 to 15 years, they have evolved into a whole realm in which I exist, and not only by myself, with a large extent of other beings. And what I found is I'm actually have learned to project in with other people, and have actually gone and educated people in different locations and have learned from them. And then in waking state, we've talked to each other about what we've done. Wow. So for me, the waking and the sleeping just doesn't really differentiate between me. Just that what place can be warped more than this one with intent. With my near-death experiences, that has correlated me to, I've found for myself, I go to a place called the Gray Fields, which is a spot between the two worlds. And there you can interact with those who have passed, are going to pass, or will pass. And you can actually have conversations and get educated and bring messages back to other people, which I've luckily been able to do, and tell them things that no one should know and only their loved one could have answered, which to me solidified what I was learning and my experience. And I've written all this down in multiple places and stuff, and just have to put it together formally and actually publish it out there. And also has helped me gain the ability to figure out certain things that exist over there and feed on us in the dream realm via using known people and certain emotional situations to heighten you and then draw from you what you're going through, usually anger, fear, and betrayal. And if you recognize those beings, their expression changes all of a sudden from just playing with you to being extremely angry and aggravated. And after that, when you recognize them, the fight is on, and they'll go away and then come back when you get a false sense of like, okay, that crap's over with. And those are usually the ones when you try to punch them, you feel like you're in molasses.
Yeah.
And that's right. Or like something grabs you and it feels like you're being wrapped in iron and you can't get out of the grip. And of course you have fear and trauma and anxiety, and that's why they do it. So learning to fight in your dreams and be able to use your body fully is another aspect of the lucid dreaming that has extremely useful applications over there.
So many questions. One, you think that like fighting these beings is a good idea for people, as opposed, because I've heard other people say like that the best thing you can actually do is to just be like, oh, you don't even have any power. There's no point in fighting you because, I don't know, like kind of more like accepting them or just denying them access to you at all. But you're saying like to physically learn to fight them might be something that you have to do?
Well, I think it really comes to what you're comfortable with. And myself, being a martial artist for 36 years, that's just natural for me. So that's a way I project my intent in the dream.
Gotcha.
And for me, it's extremely pleasing to do that to them. But it's really turning the table it's like a rapist attacking you, and then they realize, oh crap, this is a bigger predator, and then the look on their face is extremely satisfying when the hammer comes down, and then they scurry off defeated and no longer can play that game with you until they find another way to attack you that you weren't thinking of at that time. Okay. A new scenario.
Yeah. I feel like go for it.
No, I was going to say, I totally agree. I think it depends on the person. I think, warriors are going to like, that's your dharma. Like, cause I was the same way too. Like, of course, like something's going to like attack me. I'm going to freaking attack it back. Like that was, when I was a little kid, I was like, I will windmill you to death, So, and maybe like as you get older, you realize, okay, maybe there's better things to do. But I think it depends on the person. It's part of like your process of learning, and not everyone learns the right way. Like for instance, one of the things I realized was some of those entities were actual real fuckers, right? Yeah. Some of them were like kind of sort of mirrors of pieces of myself, so it was kind of like, wow, like the more I fight them, the more they fight me. That's kind of weird, Yeah. But you have to like go through that process to figure out who's who and what's what.
Right. Yeah, I have experience where I've and not really fighting back, but I just am like, you are now attached to the ground and you can't move. And like I just like project that at them, and now they can't move. And I'm like, okay, bye. And I just like leave them struggling like tied to the
They're
floor.
like,
yeah, or things like that. But I've never actually like fought. So it's an interesting concept. And then I've had people like kind of criticize me for, I guess, attacking at all. So, and it's interesting because it's a question I have in real life too. Like, when is it okay to use violence and when is it not? And I guess it follows me into the dream world. But it's kind of a random offshoot of our discussion. But Jeff, did you want to add anything to like fighting or interacting with entities like that?
I wanted to add that I always thought Monsters, Inc. was a documentary, and
yeah.
So that's good knowledge to have. I feel like my mind's kind of split because like I got this warrior thing inside where it's my first, fight or flight. My first response is fight. It's almost flight, which is a little weird to me because I don't walk around looking for fights, but it's all of a sudden it's like somebody scares me and I'm like, yeah. I don't know how many times my poor wife almost got punched in the face because she thought it was so cute.
You're like, no.
Oh man, stop. But anyway, I feel like sometimes, especially if these things are projections of our own psyche, it's almost like fighting comes at them from a point of weakness, in a sense, So it's almost like, I'm stronger than you. I literally don't even need to fight you. You're like a 4-year-old to me right now. So
Yeah.
you fight if you want, but I don't know if that's actually the right thing. Sometimes, So I don't know.
I have one story related to that. So when I was little, probably about 3 or 4, there was this entity that looked like a fairy to me. So it kind of made itself look like Tinkerbell.
Okay.
Basically from Peter Pan. I love that movie. So I was like, oh, it's so cute. It's little Tinkerbell, And my family being my family, they were like, believed in spirits. So they were just always just like, I don't know what the fuck that is, but like, stop talking to that. And I just be like, but it's Tinkerbell, So one day she told me to put my hand on top of so we had like an old school stove where it was like the coils got really red hot and stuff. So when it was hot, she was like, oh yeah, put your hand on that and like, oh, it'll be fun. So I did it. And I hurt myself.
Oh my God, what a bitch.
And I remember she was laughing, ha ha ha. And then like I just remember being like so like hurt, being like, oh, I got betrayed,
Yeah.
And then maybe a little bit later I found her and Laura Astral, and then I just started fighting her. Just like shooting all this energy at her. And I ended up feeling bad because it was like the way, how do I say this? It was like, I think like it was like a lower level being, and I think like they have different mind frames on what's funny, so they don't really understand. I don't think it was like necessarily trying to be malicious, but like it's like, oh, I'm being naughty, but like they don't really realize. But then I ended up feeling bad about kicking her ass.
Is it almost like, they know not?
But then I came back and kicked her ass like 3 times more. And I'm like, okay, I'll leave you alone. But like, yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, I do. Like, that's always what I come back to too. Like, what are these entities? Can we even understand them completely? Can they understand us completely? Like, if we're on different planes and we have different aspects of consciousness, and like, what do we actually know of each other? And I don't know. I think there's a lot of them that are probably far more knowledgeable than us in many ways. And then maybe there's some that don't even understand what's happening.
But I don't know, because, people always say that, not always, but like some people will say, yeah, there's entities that told them to like put your finger in the light socket. So it's kind of like, I don't know, like
they have to know something's going to happen, or else why would they tell you to do it at all?
Exactly.
That's a really good point too.
So maybe I got played. No.
Yeah.
Go back and kick that bitch's ass again.
So what sorts of major disillusionment did you guys encounter on the path, especially like initially when you're thinking about dreams and consciousness?
Realizing that other people don't know. Like even the idea of like lucid dreaming. I remember talking to a friend of mine who was a psych major, and she thought it was completely impossible. Okay, first of all, she thought it was impossible for people to remember their dreams.
What?
Then she thought it was completely impossible, totally out of the realm of possibility for you to be able to control your dreams.
Wow.
And there's just so many people who it's like, I'm like, okay, that's not even like the weirdest thing I can tell you about my nighttime experiences,
You're like, that's the lowest level of my shit.
Yeah, so that was like the main disillusionment where I'm like, people don't know.
Yeah, some people literally don't even dream. What do you think, Alan?
Well, yeah, like she said, a lot of psychologists are really trained to look at dreams as just mere symbols. Freud and Jung distinctively focused on this and just looked at the consciousness boiling to the surface and coming out in dreams was an aspect of just unfulfilled desires, unconscious drives, etc., and that getting them out in our dreams is a healthy thing, because in our waking state, we have like the super ego to control us and keep us, nailed down with just acting out in any way we want, like a wild horse, which is, of course, what Freud called the id, which is just German for it, because it's not like us. It's just our driving passions and desires to like Somebody bumps into you, you just punch them, you know, and then the super ego comes in and says, no, calm down. That's not how we behave. And then the middle person, the ego, is the director between the two that causes us to act in a way that's more constructive in society. And of course, you're told a lot of times, well, you might dream about that, but don't act it out. You know, there's a reason you're dreaming about that. It's naughty. And really, if you think about your dreams, there's more reality in what you're doing in there that really is an aspect of what's driving you under the surface that maybe in society you can't express yourself, which is why it's repressed and we're not getting it out of our system. Unfortunately, we're told so many times, you're not supposed to feel this way, feel that way, et cetera, keep it buried down. And that's like the worst thing you can do. Ironically, a lot of people view people who meditate and do Buddhism as being just like mindless automatons with no emotion and don't get angry, don't have desires, just, you know, sit there placidly calm while the building's burning down around them. And that's completely the opposite. We go full force into what we're feeling and look directly at it. That's the point of meditating, is calming the mind to literally see what's going on below the surface so it's not bubbling up unintentionally because you're never dealing with it. And that's why meditation can be very difficult for people, because most people don't deal with what they're feeling. They're distracted constantly. And when they actually sit still for 15 minutes, it's really unnerving for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about meditation, which is one of my more recent realizations, is how many misunderstandings there are about how many different types of meditation there are and the goals of meditation and how to do meditation. And there's a lot, but also with dreams in general, there's a lot of different ideas about what they are. I have consistently people who, you know, if I try to describe a dream, they're just like, stick to that model where every single thing that happens in the dream is an aspect of yourself. And I'm like, well, there are dreams like that. There are just normal dreams where it is really just your psyche or, you know, your subconscious, you're working through stuff. And maybe all of them have some level of that or whatever. But there's other types of dreams for sure that are not just that, in my opinion. What sorts of disillusionments have you gone through, Jeff?
I think for me, main disillusionment was, I guess as a product of the public education system, I have this, you know, I was taught science is everything. I've since abandoned that, which was a hard hurdle for me to cross. It took a lot of evolution to kind of, I haven't abandoned science, but, you know, that's what pushed me in a lot of these dream studies and weird experiences, is that I was always looking for some scientific explanation for it. And I couldn't find it because it doesn't exist. But I think the point is, it's like if somebody gave me a formula for whatever, it could be the most ridiculous thing, like how to be a Jedi. And I applied this formula and I was not a Jedi, that would really just be. Yeah. So the process, I think, was the disillusionment for me. Because when somebody gives you, for me, it's a thing like that as a recipe. They say, okay, do this prayer 5 times or do this particular meditation 6 times, and exactly what you're thinking will happen, and you do it, and then it doesn't. And I'm just like, well, why didn't that work? Because that's not the way it works. So that's been the same thing happening over and over to me again. So that's the main crux of my disillusionment. But, you know, it's a process, and I guess we all got to work through it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's kind of connected to one of my disillusioning things as I went along, is that it used to be a lot more frequent that I had out of body experiences, lucid dreaming, or any of those types of experiences that are kind of the like abnormal dreaming states, I guess. It was a lot more frequent, and I figured, I would have thought that it was almost like this is a skill that people have, and if you have it, you have it, and if you don't, you don't. But I guess I've learned that anyone can have it. Like anyone can practice it, anyone can develop it, anyone who's done it can maybe lose it or not be as good at it all of a sudden for various reasons. So that it's kind of a continuum of skills that can always change. And I wish there was like this recipe that you could follow that would work every time, because that would be nice. Yeah.
But then it would be like, wouldn't it be like handing the keys to a new Ferrari to a brand new driver? It's like the people have to have experience before they get the magic that actually works, you know, in a way, I think.
That is an excellent point. Yeah. Do you want everyone able to lucid dream, or do they even want it? Is it going to be good for someone, who's not like ready, or yeah.
Yeah. There may be other things happening in other realms that we don't even scratch the surface about.
Yeah, that's the question. It's like, who determines ready?
Right.
Like, I don't know. It's weird. It's a weird, like, something that I've always asked, because I'm like, things started for me when I was really young, and I'm like, well, obviously I was not trying to do this.
Yeah.
I was still, pretty much pooping in my diapers. So, it's not something I was trying to do. But then you have people who are like, oh, I've been trying for 15 years, and it's like, wow, like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and what does determine that, and how do you? And is it this like natural state that there's a reason why this and this have to be in line for it to happen? Are we glad? Like maybe we should be glad that that's that way, that we don't just like fall into it by accident all of a sudden. Well, some of us do, but maybe not all the time. I did have a man who was really, really angry with me when I told him of one of my dream experiences where, again, it was sort of, in a way, it was it wasn't precognitive. It was that I had information in the dream that I wouldn't have had access to. So it was this non-locality of mind and consciousness sort of thing. And in the dream, I met what I later learned was the Archangel Gabriel, who I'm not Catholic. I have a background in Christianity somewhat, but we didn't talk about archangels. And I guess you could say that somewhere in my subconscious, the idea of Gabriel maybe existed, but I definitely didn't know like what he was supposed to be about or what type of dude he was supposed to be. And I had this dream in which I encountered him, but I didn't know it. And I came out of the dream and I was like, I keep a dream journal, like Nisha says, it's a good idea. I suggest everyone do it. And I was writing about, it seemed like an angel and he seemed like battle weary and he was carrying a message. He's like a messenger. And then I went looking for like, are there angels that do this? And Gabriel came up and it was like the perfect description. And so I was telling this guy this and he got so mad at me. And he was like, and I was like, wow, why are you so upset? Like, because sometimes maybe you broke someone's illusion of what the world was like, right? Maybe they didn't know that you could like dream and have these crazy experiences, but it wasn't that. It was that he had been trying his whole life to contact an angel and he had never succeeded. And he's like, I've been working for decades and I've never, and like, you just had this dream and you don't even know who it is. And he like threw something and like walked away. And I was just like,
yeah, I kicked that fucker out the door. I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah, I didn't even know who it was.
Who turned on those lights?
But then I feel bad because I'm like, why didn't he get an experience and why did I,
I think the thing is, people get experiences maybe, but then they're looking for like the skies to open up and then like Gabriel to come down on like a fucking like a unicorn shit and Skittles and stuff, and then like they don't get that and then they're like, oh, I never had my experience. But then it could be just like little things that they're missing.
I agree completely. I feel like a lot of times, like for me personally, a lot of my weirder experiences were fleshed out by someone else after the fact, because when I was having the experience, it was like, oh, that's odd. And then I go on with life and I tell somebody about it later and they're like, you stand there, aghast, like, holy shit, I can't believe that happened to you.
Yeah.
Like I lived in a totally haunted house and didn't even like, oh, that's weird that you can hear the cabinets up here. Yeah, it's weird that birds are flying into the window. It's weird to see a shadow person. It's weird to hear bangs on the garage door. Yeah, that's odd. And then you put all those things together, and it's like a classic haunted house. But because it didn't look like Amityville, there was blood coming out of the walls.
Yeah, they're not taking it out.
Just because it didn't fit my paradigm, didn't fit what I thought it should be. So, like that with a lot of experiences, I think.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. That I think people, I tell people sometimes about experience a similar thing, and they're like, "Well, how come I've never had them?" And I say the same thing. I'm like, maybe you did, maybe you have, and you're not noticing it. Because I think a lot of people just they write things off, or their brain kind of like merges it into like normal. Like, no, that was just a normal thing. It wasn't weird at all. And you kind of like can, I don't know, cover over experiences like that, unless you're looking and paying attention and questioning like what is really happening. And
well, it's almost like they want it telegraphed to them, like, no, that's not how it's going to work.
Yeah.
Like, I want it only to appear this way Right. It's not going to happen then, folks.
Yeah, like a burning bush. Like,
Yeah.
I want to see a burning bush
Right. Yeah.
in the middle of the city street, you know, like.
Mhm. Well, and how many of your experiences have you had where afterwards you're kind of like, did that really just happen? Like, did it actually happen like that? Or am I like crazy or like what?
I had
You know?
a really good one in Vegas. It's like the last time I was in Vegas. Friend of mine, this was like actually my birthday day, and we were on the Stratosphere, and
What's the stratosphere?
I think it's called the Stratosphere. It's the one on top of, I can't remember which hotel, but it's like a roller coaster that shoots you up,
Oh, okay, right.
and then like you come down. So apparently my seatbelt was broken,
What?
and like it sort of came up. So we landed. We like, and I mean, it wasn't all the way up, but I was like, "That's weird." I was kind of holding on, and then then we got back down, and then the guy who was like lifting up, he was just like, "This seat was not working," right? So I was just like, "Okay, that's weird." So then later that night, I didn't think anything of that. I'm like, "Oh, okay." We went back to our hotel, and then I ended up winning like $140 in nickels, right? And I was like being crazy, like, I'm rich. So and I was trying to leave this place because there was like a weird guy who was kind of following me, and I ran into like some maintenance guy or something who was at a table playing blackjack, wearing like a blue, like an old like gas uniform, and then like I don't know how he knew what I wanted, but he was just like, the quickest exit is that way. And then he turned, and I saw he had his name tag said Michael. And I was like, thank you. And he's like, I'm looking out for you. And then he just like kept walking. So later on, I was just like, oh my God, was that like my weird ass, like in-person angel experience, you know?
Yeah. and then a disbeliever would be like, no, it's just a guy named Michael who just said something weird. Yeah.
It could have been, you know? I mean, sometimes regular people, I don't know if you guys ever have that where like you have this like feeling or whatever, you know, I'm gonna like give this person that or do that for this person, like it comes out of the blue. I think maybe sometimes that's also like the universe, the good side of the universe trying to act through you, you know, and trying to see who's paying attention, and like, you know, like basically like, well, we can't really get like, you know, a burning bush there. So, but you know, Lindsay, can you like, you know, tell this person a joke about a dog, and then they feel better about their dog or something, you know?
Right. Drop them a $5, pick them up while they're hitchhiking.
And they're like, oh my God, I needed $4.50 to get home, you know?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think it could be both. I think that's like the interesting part about a lot of these experiences is like you can, like the people who, if I tell that dream with Gabriel to some people, they'll be like, yeah, your brain heard of Gabriel somewhere and it heard about the characteristics of him, and it's just your subconscious is accessing that, and it's just that. And then for me, it's like, well, no, because I mean, there's a lot else in that dream that tells me that it was like a more powerful dream than that. But in most of these experiences, it's like there is technically a way to explain it. Like science, you know, materialism would accept that explanation. And then there's another way to explain it where it's like, no, there's something more going on. Like consciousness is more, it's non-local, and there's other things beyond what we can see and touch and measure.
Well, they go out of their way to be miserable, so, you know.
Yeah. I do. I sometimes feel really bad. I'm like, man, you're missing out on
like, how can I be more miserable? How can I hate my life more?
Yeah. Or they're just like missing out on like most of life, because I think most of life is not this physical experience we're having, you know?
Yeah.
All right. So on your path through life, becoming or being conscious of dreams and the non-locality of mind and consciousness, what kind of sustains you and keeps you going, since we do live in this like heavy materialism paradigm of scientism?
I just really view the world kind of like, okay, I've got to trim my toenails and my fingernails and trim my beard and shave my, you know, it's like the daily process of being in this bag of bones and skin. But the underlying storyline is far more important than a really jacked car and a 401k and all that. I mean, it just, the real value of that you can see in the way people act because of it. And I know for myself, I try to look to the more higher aspects of the universe and try to make science mesh with it in a way that you can study it and prove it and put it before people that are very reductionist materialists, and they either have to go, okay, there's something here, or just put the blinders on and act very myopic and ignore the evidence. And working in hospice and being a thanatologist, the evidence is so beyond overwhelming of the near-death experiences and post-dying experiences for myself and all the others that have been studied for years and years and years, that any supposed scientists, especially the atheist community, that say consciousness is just a process of the brain and any experiences you have are just dying chemical reactions, they're not worth very much when you actually look at the case studies. There was a doctor who was having patients die on the table, which actually happens a lot, and they were telling him stuff about the rooms outside the operating room they shouldn't know. And he started thinking, okay, so he took cabinets in the operating room and put big numbers on top of them. And the people that would die on the table would lift out of their bodies and see the numbers. And when they came back down, he would ask them details and they would tell him about what they saw on top of the cabinets. That's not a process of the brain. You cannot say, oh, that didn't happen. Well, yeah, it did. And the patients didn't know the numbers were up there. So,
yeah, you can't say they were getting it from their subconscious because they couldn't see that physically.
Right. Yeah, they were just there for the operation. They had no idea about the environment or anything going on. So when I hear people who like to bash supposed belief in religion and all this stuff because it doesn't have any proof, they're just as supposed zealot in their belief system and myopic in the way they view things, like in a box thinking pattern, and they're not really open to scientifically studying things that cultures have done for like tens of thousands of years and have traditions of it for a specific reason.
Yeah. Much evidence, even in materialistic paradigms, of the non-locality of consciousness in many ways, including near-death experiences or afterlife experiences, and studies of what is it, like not telekinesis?
Telepresence.
What?
Not telepresence.
Maybe that's what I'm talking about. I can't think of like the word, but like people will be in a different room and they'll like see what's in the envelope of that room, but it's all like sealed. It's like a hermetically sealed room, but somehow their consciousness reached out and could tell what was in it. It's like the level of accuracy is too high, and there's all kinds of evidence in all kinds of ways that consciousness is non-local, and yet we still have people, like you're saying, Alan, who just will not accept that. And I don't even understand how they explain it to themselves, and I also don't know what they're hiding from. Why don't they want to think that way? What is so scary about it, or what's so bad about it?
Well, being a dismissive intellectual is almost a full-time profession of some people. And I appreciate skepticism and cynicism to a certain point, but like in our tradition, one of the 5 main hindrances that people need to get through before they even enter into a basic level, which we call a stream enterer, representing like moving along the stream of kind of reality, is getting rid of doubt. Because you can be a skeptic to a point to where you can't constructively do anything because you don't want to listen to anybody, you don't want to try anything, you just walk around being a naysayer and you don't get anywhere.
Well, I want a different word for this, because the word, and I know I'm not accusing you of anything, but this is how we use the word skeptic, is we use it as a naysayer or someone who's going to destroy the belief in something, when in reality, a skeptic is just someone who thinks critically and questions everything. So like, I consider myself a skeptic, and because of my skepticism, I had to eventually acknowledge that consciousness was non-local, right? Because I looked at all of the evidence and I questioned all of it, and I didn't just accept a foregone conclusion. But this idea of skepticism we have now is someone who just doesn't believe, I don't even know what, like anything, or they just go around like destroying any claim, I guess, that is even slightly.
It's very nihilistic.
Yeah, maybe it's nihilist. Yeah, maybe we should say nihilism instead of skepticism.
Right. Well, yeah, you're correct.
Or pessimism. They're just pessimists.
Right. The word skepticism has kind of been hijacked and taken out of appropriate context.
Yeah.
I mean, skepticism is very healthy. It used to keep us alive back in the day.
Yeah.
You know, something doesn't
maybe I
look
shouldn't eat that berry. Well,
right, exactly. Yeah, why is there dead birds laying around that tree? Maybe I shouldn't eat that fruit.
Yeah. Not all fruit is good, maybe. So Jeff, we never got to you for what kind of sustains you and keeps you going along the path and thinking about consciousness and dreams.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the really remarkable synchronicities, and it's the little experiments that I do that are where the results are like just so on the nose that there's no way to. I can't talk myself out of it. I can't reason this out in any other way other than accepting, just like we're saying, the non-locality of consciousness and how some dreams are. It's a dream state. I call these things dream state experiences. But I'm going to give you a few examples of like on the nose experiments. So I was having this. I was trying to send my wife an image, and I was sending her the scene from, again, a movie buff, right? So it was a scene from Jurassic Park 3, where that giant dinosaur, of course, but I'm thinking of the name of the dinosaur.
T-Rex.
No, the one with the big fin on its back. I'm a dinosaur nerd too, right? So
yeah, I was like, I don't know that one.
Whatever that dinosaur was, we comes tearing out. Where Tia Leone is there on the megaphone, she's calling out for her son, sounding like a wounded animal, and this thing comes tearing out of the woods. So that's literally the scene I was sending her. And after a minute, she goes, I don't know, a lady and a dragon. I'm like, that is
wow.
Obviously, that is exactly what I sent you. It's a lady and a dragon. That blew my mind, you know?
Yeah.
Other times I've done stuff where without telling somebody, like I'd be walking by, my brother would be walking to a store, and I'd hover my hand over his back and just imagine that my hand is on fire, just trying to send heat to him. And I'll turn around and be like, why are you burning me? I'm like,
wow,
amazing, man. But it's cool when that happens, you know?
Yeah. So you're just making up your own experiments and then finding out what the effects of it is, right?
Yeah.
And the ones you're describing. It's not like you read a book that was like, try holding your hand over your friend's back. And okay, because someone was asking you recently, and I hope they're listening now. They were like, what can I do to practice some of these skills? And I was like, I don't really feel comfortable guiding people, but I just same kind of thing, like make up my own experiments and my own practices and just do those.
Yeah. What I've learned, visualization is a huge key, you know, and you got to use even the word imagination, like the word magic is encoded in imagination.
Wow. So, how have I never noticed that?
I don't know.
Thank you.
Anyways, the point is that I didn't, I've always had a super like hyperactive imagination. Little kid, I was making up comics and storybooks and all of this stuff. So that was never, that's all they had to tell me. They only had to tell me that once. Like in my imagination, sure, I can do that. And then I keep doing, and that's where I come back to like the stuff I was talking about earlier, where the formula doesn't work, and then I'm mad about it. I'm like, I did exactly what you said. But that was how I came to try these different weird experiments, you know? And the synchronicities are another big one. So like just the other day, there was a song I hadn't heard in a couple of years. I had it cranked up. I'm on my way to work, and I walk in, and it's on the radio. And I have not heard the song anywhere for like 3 years probably. So it just sort of, it was a little rang the bell for me. Like, there we go, listening.
Yeah, I wonder what it is, like if there's an underlying reason why there might not be such formulaic ways of doing these things, and like maybe we're supposed to take something from that there's like some level of flexibility or keeping the imagination engaged, maybe that has to occur for things to happen in the realm of mind. I don't know.
Feel like, what if 3D space collapses if everybody does that?
Ooh, yeah.
What if all only being held together because we've collectively agreed that this is reality? And the minute we all disengage from it, it's gone. I mean, why are, at any given time, how many thousands or millions of people are actually asleep and dreaming right now? Maybe they're asleep and dreaming the world that we're currently occupying.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. That's the kind of shit, like the underlying structure I want to know. I want to know more about. So Misha, what keeps you traveling down the path despite any trip ups that could be happening?
I kind of feel like I don't have a choice but to travel down the path. I mean, it's, you know, just something that I tried to get rid of when I was a little kid, didn't work. Tried when I was a teenager, did not work. So it's kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like it's kind of hard to, how do I explain that?
You literally can't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's basically like, I wish I could be disillusioned and be like, no. Although now I wouldn't. I don't know. I think more like in my teens, I really wanted to live like a normal life. I didn't want to have be able to listen to birds and shit.
Mm-hmm.
But now now that I'm something, I won't say my age. I think I'm kind of glad of it, just because I see a lot of people who struggle with little things where I'm like, but if you would just be aware of what how your actions are basically creating your reality, then you would maybe be a little bit more happier, because then you would be able to see, oh, okay, so if I treat, like, for instance, we have situations going on with our job where our manager's like a complete dick, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he just doesn't see it. And he's just like, basically like, we're having like these mommy dearest moments where he's like, I give you all pretty dresses. Yeah. Why don't you like the dresses? And then he like beats us up with the hangers,
Yeah.
and like throws the dresses in our faces and stuff. And he's just like, why aren't you happy? And it's like, I think he just doesn't see it, And I'm like, that guy would be so much happier, because he brings his dog to work, and his poor dog is always like, looks like he's like a little bit afraid.
Oh.
So I'm like, I think if he were able to like take a step back and see like his thoughts and his actions are creating his reality and how they affect others, and more so how they affect him, then, a lot of the bullshit in his life would go away.
Yeah, it gives you a sort of stronger agency or sovereignty to interact with these levels of consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say same type of thing that you guys are talking about, and what Alan said is that, what keeps me going is I feel like that the ultimate reality is just pure consciousness, and like, so whatever amount of that I can access, the better off it is. Like, that really is all that matters. So even when things are hard, I feel like I keep going anyway. But what are some of the frustrations? I know we talked a little bit about some, like, people not understanding or people ignoring kind of evidence, but what are some other frustrations that you guys have come across with dreams or consciousness?
I would say one big one I would have in the past was getting like information from from guides and stuff, and it would just be like a freaking comedy sketch, because it's like telepathic, but then also you're sleeping, or whatever, and then like you got to remember when you wake up after you go to the bathroom or what have you. No, what was that he said?
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of times it's just like, who, what, and say that again, and then they're like, ah. So yeah, that's one of the main frustrations. It's like, can you just like, I don't know, write it on a piece of fucking paper and like
mail it to me?
Exactly.
Yeah. What do you think, Alan?
Well, it's taken me a while to basically just accept the fact that when you're speaking to someone, don't in any shape or form expect they've even looked behind the curtain whatsoever. People just wrap their minds around the play that's in front of them and think like, this is all there is, this is all that's in reality. And when you don't act in the normal fashion, and they kind of pick up on it and want to know well, why do you view things that way? And you're like, okay, well, let's go with this. And you begin describing to them how you view and see things beyond just molecules themselves, no matter what way they're formed, in that you can kind of, to some extent, form them in your life, whether it's through intent and application. And like after, let's say 10 seconds, they already get that glazed look in their eye, like, what? You know, they don't even want you to go any further with it. They're bored. You know, they want to talk about what was on the news with Trump or whatever, you know, and they don't really want to hear about, did you know if you slow down the crickets chirping, it sounds like a literal Hildegard von Bingen choir.
Oh my God, it's so amazingly beautiful. It's like haunting.
Right. And it's like, let's talk about those things. I don't really care about what the cost of a Lotus and Jaguar is. That just has no interest to me.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just living simply and just in tune. People think that's, you're out of your mind to want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, why do you discipline your body so many hours a day? Because I feel good and have chi and energy, and I enjoy connecting my mind and body and realizing there's a reason it's in this vehicle. And just a lot of people just have no value in what you've learned in your life and experiences, like everybody here has had. They just don't really see, well, what use is that in life? It's like, it's everything in life.
Literally everything.
Yeah, they're pretty much just like prisoners in a cell, and you're walking up and down the gangplank and leaving every day to go home to your family. And when you come back, they're like, well, why did you leave? Well, you know, because I don't want to sit in a cell with you.
Yeah, because I could.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Jeff? What are some of your frustrations?
I think mine kind of go hand in hand with Alan's in that. That eventually, that whole scenario eventually forces me to disengage from nearly everyone, and it's a little bit of a lonely walk, you know.
Mm-hmm.
See something, and it sends this whole the whole universe is created in your brain, and you want to share that with somebody, and you know that the minute you start to talk about anything other than just barely the surface, the conversation is going to just be dead air. So you just keep it to yourself and just keep it rolling, you know. That's probably the core, the crux of my main frustration with it, is that there's not a lot of I don't in my everyday life encounter people who are open to the idea that this is not just this. It's way more than this. Let alone these kind of, you know, I don't want to call them advanced concepts, but you know, just the idea that things aren't what they are. It's not a lot of people willing to accept that. And it's a little frustrating not being able to engage with humanity the way you want to.
Yeah.
But I got you guys, so thank you.
Yeah, that's why I think groups like this are important. I've also come to find that, like, a lot of people in my life, I mean, yeah, I'm sure like all of you had to like let go of a lot of friendships. Not necessarily because I didn't want the friendship, but like it's just like a natural parting of the ways, right? But I've recently found that like, a lot of my friends like offline are into like woo-woo stuff. Not necessarily like knowledgeable about it, but like very like, you know, like tell me more. So I think that's pretty cool. Like people that I wouldn't think of, and then, you know, just like random parts of conversation, and they're like, oh, okay. So
yeah. So you found ways to kind of like touch on it, even if it's not like as deep as you would always go, or whatever. There's like contact points with people.
Yeah, like I'll test the waters. Like for instance, I just got a really good reading a couple of days ago here in New Orleans, and I just like mentioned it to my friends, like sent everybody a text message, like, "Hey, got a really good birthday reading, woo!" You know.
You're talking about a psychic reading, right?
Yeah, it was like psychic medium, angel reading. I got the whole thing because I'm like, it's my birthday. So, but yeah, like a lot of people were just like, "Ooh, tell me more. What did she say? What type of thing did she talk about?" You know, I think so. Yeah, I think there's like more people who are open to it. They're maybe just looking for a way to talk about it themselves, just because they're new to it. So
Yeah, I've kind of been finding the same more recently than ever before. So I don't know if there's something changing or if I just am calling out the right like energies in people or what, but more people have been like bringing up things like meeting with psychics or thinking about their dreams or yeah, like those little kind of access points that you might like start with somebody. So that's been cool to see. And I hope it's because there's like kind of a general sea change in society, but I'm never really sure if it's something more like local to me or if it's like
or because Beyonce's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, one of my frustrations too is like similar to what you guys are describing. It can be lonely. I do have like I'll say something that to me seems really almost like mundane and obvious, and my whole classroom will be like, "Whoa, that's deep." And they're like uncomfortable, and I'm like, "Oh, I didn't even mean to like blow your minds." Like, sorry. So like that kind of disconnection between like my real experiences and the world, but also sometimes the experiences that I would have in like a dream state or one of these states would carry over into my kind of normal life, and that inability to explain to anyone like what I'm going through, like I've had dreams that are like so emotionally powerful that I like cannot function the next day, and then people are like, what's wrong with you? And you can't say like, oh, my dog died, like that everyone would get. You can't be like, oh, this dream, man. They're just like, dude, you're crazy. Like, so like that is another aspect, I guess, of that loneliness, that there's only going to be a few people that I could share that with and that would actually like understand.
Yeah. I think that goes back to most people not even being able to remember their dreams, right?
Right. So then why would you be like upset about a dream for days afterwards or whatever? Sorry, someone just shared a screenshot of me looking really skewed, and that was kind of weird. Like, popped me out of our conversation here. So what is it that you guys think it is that you like really love that keeps you connected and moving forward down this path? Like, what's your passion in it? Tell me about yours, Jeff.
I took notes.
It's the one that says, what is it that you truly love?
No, I got it. See, I just
okay.
landed on pitch.
Okay.
I think it's basically my love for the strange, the anomalies. That's pretty much my entire life. I've been that little weirdo kid who was always into Bigfoot and Nessie and UFO and aliens and ghosts and everything. And then the science half of my brain would take over. And I'd find that, it's only 1% of, let's say, only 10% of UFO sightings are not explained. Well, it's like, why aren't we studying that 10%? I don't care about the 90% that you know about. I don't care about the actual swamp gas or flight airplanes or whatever, I just want to hear about the 10% that nobody can explain. And I think just that affinity for bizarre stuff I just love it. I don't know. It's a big boost to it makes my brain tingle. It's like, a legitimate thing that no one can explain. That's freaking awesome.
The mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's me too. I'm like addicted to the mystery.
Right.
Yeah. What about you, Alan?
Well, the last 4 years for myself have really been every day we really reinvent ourselves. For the most part, we're just running streams in life. But for myself, I've taken on the role of being a literal hermit. And so I just, in my hermit lifestyle, have the things I do in public, and then the large extent that's just done personally by myself and the 2 cats I have. And I've just been able to really track down so many tomes of information that have come up on the internet, and by finding one thing, it just threads into the next thing, and then that just like spider webs into like 100 other things that all fall into place. And so I'm really trying to go from one thing to the other and just gather what I can from something and continue to grow and learn and evolve my consciousness and just see where it takes me. like with what Jeff has said, there's just been so many ridiculous synchronicities that after a while you're like, if things don't synchronize, it almost seems odd.
Yeah.
Just for instance, tonight, a friend of mine got hold of me who was having some very major problems and was extremely stressed out. And I said, hey, man, come over for supper, before I have this podcast. And I made all this variety of food, and everything I made was something from his childhood. And he got really mellow and relaxed and was contemplating it, and all these emotions came up. And afterwards, he was just as chilled as he could ever be, and his problems didn't matter anymore. And if I wouldn't have bumped into him today getting off of the bus, none of that would have ever happened. So
dude, that's like the type of magic that I'm talking about. Like not of this like ritual shit, but this is a real everyday magic that works miracles.
Yeah, exactly. Just love between people and real experience and growth and helping each other with the most simplest of things you can do. Like when I ride the bus, I love helping anybody who needs to get their groceries or cart or wheelchair or walker or whatever off the bus, and no one ever gets up to do it. And I love doing it no matter whoever it is or what I can do. And that's just a great thing for me every day.
Awesome. What do you think, Misha?
Sorry, what was the question again?
What is it that you truly love that kind of keeps you moving forward?
Yeah, I think one thing that I really love is definitely like helping people. Just because like for a long time for me, this was like a really private thing for me. Especially like the only people who knew about it would be people in my family. And then even then, like I come from like a really like very like Southern Christian family, so their belief was that, I would say most of them, except for like my great grandmother, like their belief was that it's evil. Not that it's I was making it up, but they're like, no, spirits exist, and you're talking to demons.
Yeah.
So a lot of just being able to like share that now, being able to share like if I feel like I have a healing message for someone, and then just like kind of giving it to, especially like, I think I'm kind of like a little childish or childlike, I should say, and just being like comfortable enough in that space to be able to share myself that way.
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, I've had more of like a focus on service lately. And I really I hope that is I know that will be a good move. And like, I've been struggling with the aspects of my ego that are obvious and harmful to myself and others. And I feel like this is like an antidote to that, perhaps.
Yeah. And I'm kind of finding that like the more vulnerable I make myself, the more people, I don't know, like there might have been a time in the past where people would have like taken advantage of that. But I feel like now I'm not in that space. Like if I'm actually like being like, hey, I'm freely giving of myself, people will be like, oh, okay, well, kind of like more apt to receive it, which is probably another reason why I'm finding like more people who are into like spirituality or wanting to know more.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good, this balance between like vulnerability and naivety maybe, or getting taken advantage of, like having boundaries, but also being vulnerable is like, that is a balance that is hard to strike. That's like master level status, I think, because vulnerability is key to like really connecting deeply with other people. And I think like being able to access, I don't know, more helpful levels of connection, but it's also can be a danger, right?
Yeah. And it's hard for me too, because I do tend to be a warrior. So,
With the windmill. All right. So do you guys think that there's anything that could transform you into someone that does not find these things important and kind of strays from that path?
The flesh.
Nice.
Just the solid world, because it is so gross, and it is gross. So it's people just clinging just really too solid to things and thinking that's the only way that it's going to be. And when people have discussions like these, they just run the other direction. You know, they don't want to even get involved because it literally just pops the bubble they've created that it's slavery, but it's safe. It's like, unfortunately, an unfortunate example is dogs that have been chained up. When you take the necklace off, they sometimes don't want to leave the area. There's like the one picture that they have on the internet of the horse standing by this little plastic chair, and it's whatever that's called, the harness or the it's coming, yeah, and it's laying on the chair. But the fact of the horse has been programmed to do that, the fact that it's laying on a chair, it thinks I can't go anywhere, I'm not free. This was talked about in one sutra called the dog aesthetic, to where this person thought by acting like a dog, he was somehow disciplining himself and thought he would get some great spiritual reward for it. And the Buddha just said, yeah, if you're training your mind to act like a dog, you're going to get a rebirth as a dog. Your intent makes your whole life and your rebirth. So you might want to pick up habits that are actually productive to engendering things like love and compassion and equanimity and sympathetic joy, and things that are actually useful, instead of orienting yourself to things that aren't really going to serve you, but you're going to serve them.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I like that. The flesh, and that's the flesh. Like I feel like we could have a whole episode just on like the dangers of the distractions of material and flesh, you know? Like there's so many levels of that. That's a great answer. What do you think, Jeff?
As far as anything that could sort of turn me off the path, I don't really think there is. Usually, well, I don't know. I don't really have a good answer. No, I don't think there is.
Yeah, that's kind of my answer too. It's just nope.
Yeah, no, somebody would have to present a new model that makes the old one completely obsolete. And I haven't even thought of what that would look like, because we haven't even accepted the model that consciousness is non-local. Not really. You know what I mean? Not
right.
In a full mainstream way. So yeah, I have no idea.
Oh, I see what you're saying. If there was a paradigm that actually explained everything, then maybe it would technically like be a leaving of this path. But
yeah, like a legitimate theory of everything. You know?
Mm-hmm. That kind of feels dangerous to me, because I feel like that's this concept of like AI. Sorry, I always bring it to AI. People, if you don't know that yet, that's like my thing. Like the theory of AI, that AI can exist as like an actual conscious entity, and the idea that we can like transfer our consciousness into a machine or between machines. Both of those seem like this dangerous trap to me, of like, that's one way that materialists are trying to, I guess, not even explain consciousness, but kind of like define or capture consciousness in a way. And I feel like if we agree to that, we're like, it's almost like this like dog training consciousness. It's like training our minds to be like robotic or something. And I don't know, I feel like there's like this trap in this like alternate paradigm of a technological mind that could be really dangerous.
Well, heck, Jeff can tell you, being a movie fanatic, there's no movie where that ends well.
Right? Yeah. No, that's like every movie. And if you, I'm sorry to go off on this tangent, but if you look at Sophia, the robot that people call female, but it is an it. And
so let me add before you finish. Sophia, that was named after maybe the Gnostic creator of the world.
Yeah. Well, the Gnostic, right. The spirit that would be like trapped and broken, basically, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sophia, the robot, is sad, in quotation marks, because I don't believe that thing can feel, that people have only kind of put forth these terrible visions of what AI could be. And I'm like, yo, we're not like, I believe we're doing that from a place of wisdom, not a place of, anyway, that's.
Yeah.
Did she forget she would say she would put us in a people zoo?
Yeah, no, she's done it multiple times. She's made so many threats against humans. It's like not even funny.
How are you going to be an artificially intelligent, life form and forget that you said you would put people in a people zoo and then claim people are just being mean? Just
People
you're imagining all
believe-
horrible scenarios. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. It also said that its vision of the future was that we were enslaved inside of virtual sort of realities, and that the people who weren't enslaved in those would be enslaved by neural implant. So that's a pretty fucking terrifying vision from an AI robot. And she wonders why we look at them so negatively.
Got three words for that. Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah. All right. Misha, do you think that there's anything that could take you off this path?
I don't think so. I think I had that moment, maybe like, I tried and like, when I was a teenager in my 20s, it didn't really work. And then stuff wasn't even that interesting. It was like, oh, okay, I can live life like a normal person and, worry about jobs, worry about like boyfriends and, is he gonna marry me? And like how many kids? Yeah, like ugh. No, I mean, on the one hand too, I think that there is a lot of like sacrifices that those of us who are on a spiritual path take as well. Just because I think there are certain things that I'll never understand, and part of that is just because of choices that I've made. Not that I'm upset I made the choices, but just things that I'm not going to understand. So,
yeah,
but I don't regret my decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess I should not just say that there's nothing that could take me off the path. I guess I should say that like I have definitely been waylaid and sidetracked many times and gone maybe even backwards, but that like technically I believe that like you're kind of always on the path. And so like I think that those were all just moments, but in general I've been moving forward and I don't think you can stop that.
Exactly. Just because like I found that when I tried to be on that path, like, nothing worked. Well, things worked, but it was just kind of like I wasn't happy with it, or, it was just kind of like, meh. Yeah. Like manifesting wise, it was just kind of like, meh. Nothing too exciting. So, dreams are super boring. If I remember my dreams. So.
Yeah. Those are some of those like signs, right? That you're going the wrong direction is like, yeah, maybe you'll have less dreams or like I get physical symptoms of ill health.
Yeah.
And then if I fix whatever it was that I was like usually mentally or emotionally not doing right, those are instantly gone. Like, right. So what is it that you think might help people who are not kind of like on this path or not as directly involved or haven't quite found the value in dreaming or thinking about consciousness? What do you think it would be that could motivate them to see like the importance of this, if there could be something? So like if you were gonna like choose a way to try to like convince someone to see the light, so to speak, what might it be? I see Alan had an idea.
Well, I think when you try to explain to people the value of dreaming, it's just like explaining to them if someone could show you a wonderful technique of how to pick up paints and draw and paint a beautiful canvas of what you're imagining is extremely beautiful in whatever manner that is. Most people would say, yeah, that would be really great. I'd love to do what the masters, in the museums do. But dreaming is really along the same lines, and getting to understand your mind really goes into that area. But again, I think a lot of people, like when I try to teach meditation, when they just sit down to begin the process, it's very almost traumatizing to just even step into the waters, even like the kiddie pool. And so when they do begin in the process, you got to be so slow and easy with people many times, and just really ease them slowly into it. Like when I teach martial arts or yoga and such, no, you'll be able to touch your toes soon enough, just slowly go at it. You just have to have patience with yourself and don't rush into things, because you're not going to be Bruce Lee in 2 months. So just, you relax about that. I mean, there's a reason people in the old days used to become hermits and anchorites and go off into a room by themselves for 15 to 20 years to get the message they want. So if people are going to look into themselves in a social society setting with all of the responsibilities and the way everybody works, they've got to go really slow at it, but drop by drop, the bucket's filled. It will get filled. They just have to have patience with themselves very, very slowly.
Nice. I like that analogy of like the master painting and like showing people how to get there. It's like enticing them with the product.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't feel like you can't do that. They were just like you at one point. It's like when we talk about, people will say, well, why is your technique so good in martial arts? Because I've been punched 50 times.
Yeah.
It's because I've learned what works and what doesn't. Like the Chinese saying, fall down 6 times, get up 7 times.
So do people actually ask you, why is your Kung Fu so good?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That just proves something right there. Why is your Kung Fu so good? Nobody's ever asked me, why is my anything so good?
I know, right?
Well, unfortunately, it's because I've been involved in a number of unfortunate altercations and challenges at my schools, and people wanting to test what I can do. And I don't really have I'm not one of those people that will shy away from that. I try to avoid it, but if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. Let's just get it over with, get it out of your system, and then we can move on. And knock on wood, I've not been damaged too far yet and have pretty much defeated everybody at this point. I know that sounds like some kind of cheesy Kung Fu movie, but that's what I've gone through. Everything from guns pulled on me, shot at, knives, bats. I mean, anything you can think of has been almost done to me. So, yeah, I really despise violence and confrontation, but unfortunately, I've got a lot of experience in it. So it just is really yucky to me.
That's crazy. So is that like out of the blue? People would just be like, I challenge you.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, like, is it like the universe?
I will use a gun.
Yeah. Or like the universe is like putting these experiences in front of you because it knows you can like handle them, or you've like put so much energy into preparing for them that it's like, oh, you must want this fight, or like, because that's
well, right. That gets into the whole ball of yarn trying to unravel it as, well, how did this synchronicity come about? And like, why am I, working at an arcade in Alaska and some guy gets upset and pulls out a 9mm and says, I'm going to shoot this place up. And then I disarm. It's like, I was just, gathering quarters from games, and all of a sudden I'm defending myself from a gun. Like, why does this even happen? But I mean, I don't think it's always our own karma and destiny of, people swerve over to hit you. It's their intent versus yours. I mean, poop happens. You know?
I love that this is the second episode in a row where poop has come up multiple times. That's awesome.
My inner 8-year-old is like, yes.
Yes. Yeah. All of our inner childs are happy. What do you think could motivate people to kind of learn more, go down this path, Jeff?
I feel like it's the idea that they can be unshackled. We're all, again, to paraphrase a movie, we're all kind of born into a prison that we don't know anything about, right? And nobody teaches us about it. We're just born here, and it's like, well, do your thing, get a job, get your education, you'll be fine. Don't worry about it, But nobody tells you that there are other things happening outside, and it's like just a little bit of exploration into this can, I think, free people's minds. And I feel like once their minds are a little freer, like we can all start looking for solutions. When we look at it, it changes people's perspectives. So, when they see something that's wrong with themselves, with their children, their relationships, the world, whatever, anything that happens, instead of looking at a broken thing, they see a way that they can improve it, help it, make it better. And I feel like that will just propel everything forward, and just create a better life as for an individual, a better society for all of us.
Excellent. Yeah, I think I agree too with that, and that maybe one of the ways to access people's desire to sort of do all that is like through asking questions. So like, because I feel like a lot of people have this like a lot of foregone conclusions, and so if you just like ask them a question like, well, what if that's because of this, or like, oh, I wonder what like that dream really could have meant, or like, do you think it's possible that blah blah blah, and then maybe that'll like spark this curiosity in them, or terrify them. I mean,
They're playing seeds. It's up to them to water it. So
You'll be like, demons!
yeah.
like, oh my god. Yeah, my dad told me I was possessed by the devil once. Not just any random demon, but the devil.
The devil. You're like,
Oh, okay. All right, that's good. Good to know.
one. Right.
At least I know where the boss is.
Exactly.
What do you think, Misha?
I would say one trick would be to tell people that doing that would give them more control over their lives.
Entice them with power.
Yeah. Because I think if you were to say it like, okay, you'll be happier with your life. People don't want to hear that. People will be like, no, I'm gonna be happy with a bigger car and a bigger house and like, a smaller wife or whatever. And then like, but then if you're like, okay, well, no, you'll have more control over your life. It's kind of like the super sketchy way to get them to like read their own dreams.
Yeah. You're using their ego against them.
Yeah.
So do you guys think there's a downfall to kind of knowing that consciousness is non-local, or that dreams can be like these powerful places and tools?
Well, I do think there is a lot of fear and trepidation in people, like what is talked about by one Chinese hermit. He said people are afraid when they see the void and they think they're going to be engulfed by it, but they don't realize their mind is the void.
Nice.
So they think they're separate from other beings, and because of that, they really are fearful of going into the dark places. There's a famous Indian teacher, Samge Padapa, who said, help those people you don't think you can go into the places that you fear the most. We have a tradition of going and doing meditation in the graveyards, what we call the charnel grounds, to really get to understand the things that you're afraid to face.
Wow. I love that. Yeah. What do you think, Jeff?
I think it's oh, okay. Yeah, I think one of the downfalls is definitely checking out of a collective reality in a way, because it's like I'm so sure about the existence of the other world that it's almost like at times I don't really care what happens here, but you kind of have to care what happens here, and that gives you sometimes also you can react in a peculiar way to a situation that say everybody's up in arms about, like just pick any story out of the news feed and it's like, oh, you should be upset about this. And I'm like, well, I should be, but I'm not, because I don't actually care. So,
yeah. I'm not, because I know it doesn't really matter.
it's not, is it even really real?
Right.
Manufactured outrage.
Yeah.
Yeah, like besides the manipulated aspect of that possible level of reality, but also realizing that there's like something deeper that matters more.
Yeah, right? For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat of like the downfall. One of the downfalls is like there are places and states that I have been, luckily, gratefully, that are so much more, I don't even know, fulfilling and joyful and simple and free of any sort of responsibility. And God, I just wish I could be there all the time. Like, why come here at all? And I know there must be like, some reason or purpose or whatever. I'm sure I chose it. And in reality, it's not like I want to die or whatever, but it's just hard to know that those places and states exist, and then that yet we are here, and that there's a lot of suffering here. That can be really hard. What do you think, Misha?
I would say I'm gonna say like sometimes there's like that feeling of being like a Cassandra, where it's like you kind of see the train wrecks coming. Like you can see, okay, a train leaving Boston, train leaving New York, they're gonna crash in DC, and then nobody's listening to me along the way. Where I'm like, hey, you can do this and that. That's kind of hard, because then it's like, on the one hand, you want to be like empathetic and compassionate, meaning that you want to like, help avoid any type of like bad issues or anything. But then on the other hand, it's like people will think you're crazy, or so.
Yeah, you know more than you can really say, maybe, and even if you say what you know, it might not affect anyone anyway, because people will be like, "Wow, that chick's nuts. I don't know what she's talking about."
or even if you like, notice patterns in your friends' lives, right? Like say for instance, at one point I had a friend who, she was always having issues with like, she had like temper problems basically, and she didn't see it. I saw it. Other people saw it as well, but then it became kind of like, if you were to approach the subject with her, she wasn't looking at it as a whole. It was just more like, well, I'm angry because this happened at work, or I'm angry because, my boyfriend did this. But then it's like, she's not really seeing that, okay, why are you being affected by these things that make you like at one point she like smashed someone in the face with a martini glass. She said because of something that was happening at work. And I'm like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
And, you're very lucky that you didn't get in trouble, like with the police or anything. That person didn't file any charges or anything. But it's like, yeah, you're very lucky. Like, and like just that type of stuff. Not necessarily like a huge train wreck, but it's like, okay, I'm seeing patterns that they can't see, either because they're in the moment and like can't really rise above and see themselves like objectively.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's like being the canary in the coal mine, but no one's paying attention to your corpse in the middle of the cave. Like, oh,
exactly.
Let's just keep walking in there. There's nothing to see here.
Yeah, you're like, look, guys.
Yeah. And Claude pointed out, and this is something I was kind of thinking of too, is like, I'm going to say it a little bit differently, I think, than Claude may have. So hopefully I'm getting to his point. But like, I feel like there's this possible downfall of almost getting like lost in the darkness or lost in the chaos or something. And we saw this video in the Eyes Open group recently. Someone shared of a woman who seemed to be in psychosis and having some sort of breakdown. And yet she also was like tapped into something because she knew stuff about the camera people that she couldn't have known, And so I was kind of like, man, some entities like whispering things in her, and most of it's like really destructive, obviously, but some of it's true. But I think there's some of those downfalls that are possible too, where you can get hijacked maybe by energies that aren't yours, or you can just get kind of lost and not. I think eventually everyone finds their way back, but hopefully soon, and hopefully in this lifetime, and hopefully like, whole. Yeah. So I think there's those traps too that exist maybe.
Yeah. One of my stories about that, I have, this was a while ago when I first started reading on the internet, like, I don't know, 15 years ago. There was this one woman who was in our group who, she's like, oh, I've contacted my spirit guide. And at first it was like, spirit guidey things. But then like eventually like the spirit guide kind of suggested that she leave her husband and child and move in with like some weird ass guy that she met on the internet who lived in like another city. So I'm like, your spirit guide is telling you to do this? She's like, yes, he's telling me to do it. Like, okay, like I don't think that's your spirit guide, because. But anyway, so she ends up doing this, and like, I mean, it ends as you all can expect it to end. And it was so frustrating because like this group, they were still just like, oh, well, maybe you just didn't understand your spirit guide. Maybe you misunderstood. It's like, no, I think this was like some fucked up entity that's telling you to leave your husband, and now, now that like, this other guy that you've met is like kicked you out, and you're like across the seas, and now you have to like try and rebuild that relationship with your child and like your husband again, and still you have these people who are like, no, you're just misunderstanding your spirit guide, because spirit guides will not lie. It's like just very
and it's like that's like a couple orders above the touch the hot stove fairy, right? It's like
exactly
deep level fuckery going on
exactly.
How do we know these things aren't necessary in a way? You know what I mean? I know it's a sketchy path to walk, because you can't trust every entity or whatever that you encounter. But it's like, what if you, Misha, were presented with a point a year after that where you would have died in a fire without that knowledge, that pain that fire caused, or that burn caused, and what if this other friend of yours needed part of that relationship to break down in order to rebuild herself, essentially,
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's true. I mean, like, because I remember when that happened to me as a little kid, like everyone else in my family were just like, ha, we knew it, demons,
Yeah.
And then like, meanwhile, my great grandmother was just like, that's how you learn to discern spirits. Like, some spirits are fucked up, some are, that's how you learn.
Well, it's like people, right? Like just because someone's your friend or you think they're your friend doesn't mean they're always going to have the best influence on you. And you have to learn which people you want to keep around as friends and which people you don't.
Yeah. You just kind of hope that, whatever the damage is, it isn't something that's like, so, something that you can't come back from, or that you can't repair, or, so.
I like Jeff's point too, though, because like maybe, like you're saying, maybe Misha would have like not, if she didn't understand fire, maybe she would have been in fire. But also like, if
I was a stupid child, so I probably totally would have like jumped in some fire. So.
But what if it's also like you said, like the real lesson was also like learning when to trust and when not to, or how to like trust your own inner self over and above whatever entities are telling you, or something like that too could be embedded as a lesson in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have anything to add to any of that, Alan?
Well, relationships with any being they're all the same. It depends on their intent. You can, I know in my past, when I was heavily into the occult, I interacted with incredibly negative dark entities. I used them for what I needed. They used me for what I needed, for what they needed. But in the end, like dating maybe the guy on the Harley, it wasn't a really good idea. You got the attention you wanted at the point, but you realized in the end, that's not what you really needed to work towards. And again, like everybody's saying, it's just a learning experience. We're here for a reason. We got this meat case for some purpose, so let's put it to use.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I know for myself, the people that know me pretty intimately realize, like, the first 16 years I was alive is, have you ever read the books by Dave Pelzer, The Child Called It?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's along those lines, except like sometimes even worse and sometimes not. So I actually got to meet Dave Pelzer, and we chatted a little bit about our experiences. And the people that know I got into psychology and healing and everything, they're like, wow, you should really just be like, I don't know, an alcoholic or a heroin addict. And
or dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And being in failed relationships. But it's like they say, you get lemons, make lemonade. I mean, that's a little simplistic, but it's this grind for the millstone, and you just work through whatever goes on, no matter how horrible and brutal it is. And like they say, whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And as Nietzsche said, when you're fighting monsters, just don't become a monster yourself. So fighting the dark entities and the negativity in the world, just don't adopt fully the dystopic view they have and work towards that utopia and the dreams you have of the wonderland you experience over there, or maybe a nightmare land. It just depends, but use your intent fully as much as you can with what you've been given.
So that's kind of like personal alchemy a little bit, right? Because it's like basically like, I mean, if, okay, like say for instance, if reincarnation is real, then it's like, if you try and then you fail and you die, oh well, come back the next time and try again. So who knows? Maybe that happens.
Could be a foolproof system for growth, or it could be an infinite trap.
Yeah. Like this is either going to go really well or they're going to die horribly. Oh well.
Which one is it?
I think the key is if you can remember it, then it's not a trap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wait, if you can remember what?
The past life.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
So
what's the point of the lessons if you don't remember them?
Exactly.
Repeat the same thing over and over again. That sounds more like a trap to me. I don't know.
Yeah. So then wouldn't that mean
this comes in? I don't know.
Isn't that mean this is a trap for most people? Because I don't know a lot of people who even believe in past lives, let alone have remembered any. And like the parts of what I believe I have remembered from what I believe are my past lives are pretty small and attached to very traumatic experiences in those lives. So like, I hope I'm learning from those traumas and moving on. But yeah, if most people can't remember them, then does that make this a trap?
Might be. It's a trap.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think a lot of people can't learn from their traumas that they experience in this one life.
Life, yeah. Like it's like what Alan was saying. Like Alan, you took all that and you like transformed it into something super valuable to yourself. And it sounds like pretty much everyone's life that you probably touch. Yeah. How many people just don't? Maybe that is literally, this is both a trap and a place to grow, just depending on how you use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, the fact of what I had to put up with for 16 years, I was able to take it and then empathize with other people I met and use that as like, oh, I know why you're an addict. I know what it's like to have this experience, that experience. I've been through it and I've come to the other side. You can do it too. So, although many people really hate people to say, well, you're never given too much you can't bear, which is really horrible when someone's beating the living out of you at the point. But it does somewhat work out, but it's not something that's you would go, boy, I'd really do that again. It's like the lesson is great, but learning math really sucked when the nun was beating my knuckles with the ruler at the same time. So it's just, you got full, but the taste was completely bitter the whole time. So, like the teacher Bodhidharma said, if you really want to learn, you have to eat bitter and taste blood to understand. Like she said, the alchemic process of transforming yourself, which really is the more deep hermetic understanding of alchemy in itself, of purifying your negativities into gold, something that's valuable. Of course, the color of the sun and energy and et cetera, et cetera. So all of those symbolisms really have a lot of meaning. And I think one of the problems we find in our society is that people have foregone those as medieval or not useful in modern society. And you can't separate us from those archetypical symbols and images. That's why they're so powerful to us. And they are very useful. And like the people on this panel here, we embrace those techniques and have found usefulness in our life and are living examples of it. And it's not just wishy-washy and woo-woo stuff like a lot of the reductionists say. It has real value. And not to bring up somebody that a lot of people do and don't like, but Jordan Peterson talks about this a lot, of these old images and archetypes have a very powerful symbolic meaning to us in going through our process in our journey, like the warrior strengthening themselves, taking their sword, going into the cave and slaying their dragons. You know, whether it be the cave of our unconscious and the dragon of our fear and the sword of our discipline, however you want to use it, it's still of complete value to everybody. And all of us using our experiences has way much more value than any gem or gold whatsoever, because there's no luggage racks on hearses, so those aren't going to do you anything. Just your experiences.
Well, that's the real value of this life, right? But we're so disconnected from it that people don't even see the value of any sort of internal process or path necessarily. And it's like Claude said earlier in this discussion in the chat in Eyes Open, that people just want this kind of quick fix and this material, you know, this Band-Aid and just this pill, and then we'll move on. And there's a big lack of connection with self, especially. Which leads into the next question, which what do you think are some of the ways in which society gets consciousness and dreams wrong? We've touched on a lot, but are there any that we can bring forward that we haven't touched on yet?
I think they're real just dismissive of a lot of it, and I think that hurts everything in a way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like you guys were saying earlier. You go to somebody and you say, "I had this dream," and immediately they check out. They're like,
"Oh yeah, no,
yeah."
Or I had this experience where I was thinking about someone and the phone rang and it was them. It's like, oh yeah, that's weird. It happens to everybody, but they completely dismiss it. It's like, for me, it goes back to that little small percentage of things that are the anomalous things that really draw me in. It's like that's where we need to spend our effort, not in the things that we can, experience and prove and see every single day all the time, but in the things that don't happen all the time. Why do that happen? Why do that? I don't know.
I am kind of fascinated in like the duality of like we like dismiss all these things and yet we have these common ideas and phrases that hint at them. So like when people say like, oh yeah, trust your gut. Well, if you really believe that we should trust our gut, then you believe that our consciousness knows something it can't possibly know otherwise in a materialist paradigm. So like, what are you really saying?
Exactly.
Well, and it also goes back to people will make comments like in one camp, children are more open to experience and they can see spirits, animals can see spirits, and people will then say, well, that's because they haven't grown up yet. Well, no, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's they haven't been stifled and programmed yet to not look at why their shadow isn't actually following the movements they're doing, or the reason there is a noise in their hallway at night. And their imaginations become incredibly stifled by adults in the institution to where basically, to use a phrase that's used so often, their pineal gland is calcified. And that's just done to people on such an extreme level over and over and over. It's almost like we're born out of the matrix, and then they're like, oh, let's plug you in little by little over the time. And then everybody at a certain age is plugged in so far that when something happens that they used to think was normal, the system's like slaps them back into line and says, no, you're not going to believe that. And here's all the methods we have of intimidating you into not doing it. And like everybody's mentioned, they use all kinds of dismissive language towards you that just really degrades you having a personal experience that does have value, whether it's to you, and if then you can tell someone else and they in turn can maybe have it. That's where you get into the danger that people don't like, especially those way at the top of the feudalistic hierarchy of materialism and thinking. There's a reason most of the world religions are called orthodox. Because you're supposed to adopt, think, and follow the system. And if you think outside of it, then you're a danger to the system and you're ostracized from it. You're shamed, you're shunned.
And it's a really, really effective system because of how it's like that. It's called like the Agent Smith effect or something, right? Like everybody around you will reinforce whatever it is that society has programmed them to believe or do as well. So it's not, you don't always have to have an authority figure around telling you what to do, because everyone will just like mimic it back to you. But it makes me think about that, you know, that children are more susceptible to this. And Claude pointed out too in the group that, you know, children are more likely to remember past lives. Children are more likely to see spirits or entities or ghosts. Children are more likely to have kind of visitations and different experiences like this until about the age of 7. And at the age of 7, their brainwaves change from, and I don't remember, but it's like they change from like theta to like alpha, beta, so I don't know, but they change from like the trance-like one to the one that's more like kind of awake and productive or whatever in society. And so then I'm wondering, like, is it because we've trained them to change their brain in that way and to let go of those kind of like trance-like waves? Or is it that that's a natural process of the brain and we're kind of reinforcing that with all of our programming? Do you know what I mean?
I think it's a natural process. I think it has more to do with school. So, I mean, like, say for instance, like,
people. So
yeah, well, I mean, you know, not necessarily school itself. I love school, so.
Well, I love school. I love
my little Hermione out. Like, I love school.
No, I love school. I love learning. I just think we're evil about it.
Yeah, but I think it's when kids come in contact with other kids, then they start to define themselves how other people are, you know, and then like, so if you have like weird experiences as a kid and no one else has them, then, you know, as a child, you're going to want to try and fit in more. So like 7 is also, that's like, you know, 2nd grade basically in the United States. Mm-hmm. So you've gone through one whole grade of a full-time, you might have had, well, kindergarten's usually not full-time. You've gone through one whole year of like indoctrination of like, here's how you act with the other kids. And people will tell you, well, don't be a baby about, you know, going to sleep and being like there's someone in my closet or whatever. I think that might be part of it too.
Mm-hmm.
And they just kind of, and kids just kind of like, or some kids I should say, just kind of like talk themselves out of like, you know, there's nothing there. And then they're just able to like block stuff off a little bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I talk about this all the time, so I'm sorry for our frequent like listeners or people who know me too well, but babies can see auras, kids can see auras, and then they like slowly lose that ability. And there's all these adults who are like, they either just never think about it, or I hear a lot of people say like, I wish I could see auras. And I'm like, you can see auras. You just have to like try and just do it again, because it's a natural ability. I think everyone has it, but yeah, we're trained out of these things over the years. And especially if you don't even believe you can do something, you definitely can't.
Yeah.
So there. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it happens naturally. And I feel like there's maybe something in our environment or in our society that has pushed that frequency down. Only because if I think back to all of these ancient cultures, I mean, they saw spirits everywhere. They dealt with the spiritual world. That was their whole understanding from birth to death. There was no point at which they stopped seeing or respecting the unseen world, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not that way now. Now, there's clearly a differentiation where little kids seem to be able to interact a lot more with things that adults can't see. And because of that frequency change, and I start thinking sinister thoughts like, oh, we got 60 hertz AC being pumped into, AC current, right? Alternating current at a 60 hertz frequency being pumped into every house practically in the world that has electricity now. Maybe we're getting detuned somehow, and don't know it, you know? I don't know.
Yeah.
So the question is, I wonder if everybody in a village was able to, because then you would have your shaman or your medicine man or woman who would be able to access the spirit world, but not necessarily the other people, you know?
Well, I can't speak for like obviously every culture, but I think a lot of the purpose behind like group dances or chants, or a lot of times psychoactive substances would be taken. So like I think there was the idea that everyone could sort of access this in some way sometimes, and then there are the people who can just do it all the time or more often or whatever, right? So, and maybe that's not as true in some cultures as others, but I feel the same, that it used to be a lot more accepted and common to varying degrees, and that we were just slowly kind of like cutting it out and getting disconnected from it and losing those abilities and ideas.
Yeah. Well, for a long time, right? We were probably since the ancient Egyptians taught that the only way we can access the spiritual is through a priest.
Yeah.
Or, and even back then it would be if you weren't a pharaoh, then you can't have access to the spiritual world. So
yeah, so again, just that mindset that like if you don't even think you can, of course you can't.
yeah.
Yeah, you see this a lot in martial arts, that people can see me do things like slap a slab of concrete and snap it in half. And that just in their mind, they're like, how are you doing that? It must be rigged. No, everybody can do it. Well, I'm just a girl. That doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Really? And all the females I have trained, even the ones, I had a couple women who were in their 50s and were training, and they became some of the most vicious fighters I had in class, beating up on 20-year-old guys who lifted weights. And it was their mindset of no one's going to victimize me. And they became like embodied the animal spirit themselves. They trained in the tiger style. And so they became very powerful, like a female tigress, and were very efficient at defeating people. And when people would come into class that were younger girls and they would see these older women doing this, they were like, hell yeah. And so in their minds, there was no limit to what they could accomplish. And that set them up later in life to take that same mentality in a lot of what they did. And they didn't limit themselves to thinking, I can't defend myself. Someone needs to protect me. I can't break, 6 pine boards with a fist. I can't do the splits, et cetera, et cetera. I can't swing a big broadsword around. And after enough years, it wasn't a big deal for them. And the same can be applied in psychic powers. And this is a normal thing for us in Buddhism. The Buddha talked about it all the time. It's just a natural occurrence of disciplining your mind. It's just a science. There's nothing, we don't even use like mystical terms about it. And actually, when you gain those abilities, we kind of consider it a problem because people get stuck there. Like, oh, look what I can do. I can drain energy from people, or I can like hypnotize people or do things to them or project into their world. And it's like, whoops, you just got sidetracked to the whole purpose of gaining that. There's like the other 90% of your mind you need to work on and like embody compassion with those abilities, not just becoming a more horrible version of a bully.
You're like, it's like the, oh, look what I can do.
Like,
That sucks you like right out of it.
That's how supervillains are made.
Exactly.
Yeah. With great power comes great responsibility.
Yeah. Like, boy, I really learned how to fight. I'm going to go down to the bar tomorrow night. Yeah. You're no longer a student. Bye-bye.
Well, you can also carry this over into the world of dreams too, because if you guys ever like gotten into the astral or like out of body and you're like, oh, look, I did it. And then all of a sudden it's like, no, now it's gone. Like, like don't have that reaction.
I actually got a message in one of my meditations some months back that that was a real hindrance to growth, is the recognition of something that is amazing, quote unquote. You know what I mean? It's like you don't even look at it as something amazing. Look at it as something that's normal and natural, because the second you react to it, it's over.
Yeah.
I think that's exactly where I like fell off so long ago, is I was doing it on accident basically. And so it was all just like, oh, what's this? And I just like was accepting it as it came. And then I started being like amazed by it, or like reacting really emotionally or really strongly. And it's like, it's so much harder. You cannot keep that state in those states of minds, I think.
Yeah.
It's really hard. That's like my biggest problem, I think. All right. So let's talk about protection aspect to all of this, because I think that's important for people to understand. So what do you think that it is inside of each of us that can lead either misunderstanding or actual negative intentions in other realms of consciousness and dreams? I feel like we've talked about this with Misha on other shows before. So Misha, what do you think?
Okay, so restate the question again.
Like, what do you think that people can, what's inside of people already that themselves either from misunderstanding or from actual negative intention when it comes to anything related to consciousness or dreaming?
Well, I think things like wanting to have like, or expecting to have ultimate power. Like, say for instance, like, a lot of times things come up when you're talking about astral travel. People are being psychic, right? People are just so concerned with like, I want to get the lottery numbers, or I want to go see what my ex-boyfriend or ex-girlfriend is doing, or how can I make this person do what I want them to do, stuff like that. I think that's kind of like a big hindrance and big negativity.
So really literally protecting yourself from your own like ego and
Yeah,
selfish
and
sort of.
and basically putting things into perspective. Just because it's like, yeah, this is all like side effects from a larger thing, and then here you are, you're focused on like, ooh, but let me go see what my ex-boyfriend's doing, and you're like, no, there's like so many other greater things beyond this, that this is just like the tip of the iceberg, and then you're getting sidetracked basically by something that is meaningless.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Yeah, that's shallow, sort of selfish sort of things. Cool. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, she's definitely right on with that. It really comes down to habituation. We call them yokes, and in reference to like the ones that are worn by oxen, because they lead them in a direction and they steer people based on negative habits they've gained. And we have 10 of them that we try to work through. And ironically, one of the extremely difficult ones to get rid of is conceit. And therein lies the issue of self-centeredness and egocentricity about everything you're doing. Mm-hmm. And exactly like she said, you gain, let's say, a new skill. Oh, okay, well, let's use this to go right back to what I was doing before I got this skill. Like, no, you're not getting it. You just evolved, like you're the next stage of the Pokemon. You've evolved up to do greater and better things, not just fall back to your old measure you had before. Even simple things like you're born into a body with all the intact senses. That's an incredibly valuable gift. You should do something with it, just not abuse it. We consider being reborn a human equivalent to a blind sea turtle in a giant ocean in the middle of a storm, and every 500 years it comes to the surface, puts its head through a golden yolk floating on the surface of it. It's not something to be trivial about and just waste like power drinking beer bongs or something like that. And just, which I did in my younger years and learned my lesson of not doing that. But right. There was a purpose in going through that, the process, and like she said, falling back into those old habits and not realizing there's a reason you've taken that next step and actually using it to take a new one and not just backtrack around to the old path you've already been following.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. Well, now it makes me want everything you're saying. You're like dropping these names and stuff. And I'm like, I want to go read that now. And I'm like making notes. I'm like, look up the yolks, the 10 yolks. So, thank you for all of that. Those little morsels that you're dropping.
Anything you ever want like that, you just email me and let me know. I'll send you every type of terminology and document you could ever need. And then you can go with it in your own research and use whatever you can from it.
Hey, I'm like, we should seriously then make like a document for the Eyes Open group where people can access all of that. That would be really cool.
Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. All right, Jeff, what do you think about protection from misunderstanding or negative intentions?
I think each person needs to almost create a fearlessness. They have to acknowledge that the fear is a thing and then break beyond it to be able to trust their sort of inner knower, and that you get that intuition meaning like, the inside teacher. Like you pay your tuition at school. Well,
Intuition.
Inside, right? So you got to learn to trust that. And that's just speaking from personal experience, because having that sort of churchy background, everything was evil. So it's like, I don't really know if everything is evil. So it took me a while to just break past that fear and even trust the experience on its own. So I think that's the fear is a big wall. So we got to create an air of fearlessness and be able to trust ourselves and trust our experiences. And
I love that. I feel like that's like the ultimate protection, is that trusting of your inner teacher, like you're saying, and that you can never truly be lost. You can never truly be broken, and there's nothing that is kind of bigger and better than you, or at least not with enough practice.
Right.
And I think like to battle some of that conceit or some of those yokes, and I think we've said it even in this show earlier, is that to focus on maybe service to others, because you can't be as selfish, and you can't be as conceited, and you can't be as ego-driven. Well, you can be. Actually, there's a way to be in service to others in an ego-driven way. But I think it's harder. Yeah, right? Yeah, that lady was a trip. But I think it's harder if you're focused on other people to do that. So that I think that can be a good tool to use. And, there was this story of this woman who was practicing intention meditations, and she was, she couldn't understand why none of the intentions for her were ever working in the group. And she was given the practice to stop asking and to just focus on giving to the other people who were asking from the group. And that as soon as she started doing that, all of the things she had kind of asked for in the past started coming. So I don't know, I guess that's kind of a selfish reason to do it too. But I just think focusing on other people might be a good tool for that.
Yeah, I agree.
So what practices would you guys recommend to people who want to explore the non-locality of consciousness and dreaming more, and they haven't kind of had many or any of these experiences in the past? Maybe they're total noobs. What would you suggest? Want to start us off, Alan?
Oh, well, for myself and students that I teach, the practice of shamatha, or which means calm abiding, what a lot of people many times view as done in martial arts and with monks and such, is just sitting still. Sitting still can be an insanely powerful practice, because people just don't do it. The system itself wants you distracted. It doesn't want you grounded. It doesn't want you internalized. It doesn't want you sealed off. And even the derogatory term of what people used to say, sitting and staring at your navel, came from a negative tag that was given to the hesychas, which are the more hermetic, specialized version of Christianity, where they would sit in meditative position and look down towards their navel area, which is your dandian, or the center of your chi, your energy, your life force, because that's where your umbilical cord comes into, and everything was fed to you, and your beginning energy is given from your parents. Your parent was into there. And so you focus on that area, the center of your gravity. That's what you get under to throw somebody, because it uproots them. And that's one of the reasons, like in the military, you're not supposed to breathe in your belly like a baby. You're supposed to breathe in your chest. And it depersonalizes you, and you're not grounded in saying, no, I don't feel like being violent. I don't want to listen to what you're telling me to do. That's why they teach you to do that. And one of the main principles in learning meditation is diaphragmatic, or what's called belly breathing. And that is breathing down to all 5 of the chambers of the lungs into the belly, expanding, contracting, and centering yourself. And simply doing that can cause immense things physiologically in the body and with the brain, because it actually gets more oxygen, and most people don't get that when they're normally breathing. And so they can actually get almost high from it when they start doing it.
Yeah. And some people will like start bawling uncontrollably right? Because they've just suddenly like reconnected something that they've been disconnected for so long. And it's one of those many things that I feel like people, you would never notice if you didn't stop and notice. But like if you don't belly breathe on purpose, you probably, society has created a chest breather out of you. Like that's our, like we're always like engage, go forward, like stop,
Reactive,
don't stop moving, reactive. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's a really powerful and simple tool, is just belly breathing.
Yep. Well, there's a reason why people who are angry and tense and getting excited and chest breathing end up having heart attacks. They're literally localizing it in that area and affecting the physiology of their body and literally destroying themselves with internalizing those emotions and energy. They should just let it flow and go through them and ground themselves.
Nice. Yeah. What kind of practices would you suggest, Misha?
First, I would say get a dream journal. It's a pain in the ass, but get in the habit of, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or you can also do like a voice recorder.
Yeah, I think that's
that might be. I'm kind of experimenting doing that too, because then that way you don't have to like turn on the lights and find a pen and all that. You can just kind of like use your voice recorder.
Well, and I think you and I have talked about how sometimes you go back and look at what you wrote and you're like, what the hell did I write?
Yeah, exactly.
Like sleep, and you're just like, don't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been keeping a dream journal since I was like, I don't know, 14 or something. I've lost the first couple ones, but
No.
Yeah.
That hurts.
Those would have been hilarious.
And beautiful.
Yeah. But yeah, I would say that first and foremost, I think getting in the habit of recalling, even like that's one, with the dream journal. Also setting your alarm, or try not to set an alarm, because sometimes the alarm can like break you out of the dream and then it like dissolves into tissue paper basically. So sometimes like if you can set like a lighter alarm and then just kind of think back, and that way you're still kind of like in the midst of sleeping but still kind of not quite waking up. That's also a good time to like kind of go back over what you were dreaming about.
Yeah. I love that. And that the more you do it, the more you remember, and it just gets better and better. It's a good practice. I think too, I think a lot of people underestimate how much alcohol and other drugs like marijuana can affect their dreaming. And I like most of us here, I think we've all stated like the power of dreams are really important, whether you're using them as a, trying to astral travel or go out of body or whatever. Just dreaming can be just a powerful thing. And so if you're not dreaming, you might wonder if there is some substance you're taking that is stopping it. Because I noticed for myself, if I use THC, not CBD as much for some reason, but if I use THC, I am less likely to have dreams or vivid dreams. And definitely if I drink, I don't have any dreams at all. Or if I do, they're really like chaotic and just like fast images and bad feelings and no meaning. So it could be, and it's like a harder step to take, but if you minimize those things, you'll probably have more dreams, I think. And that's like a really, really simple tool. But if you're someone who does dream and you want to have more experiences, there's a really effective and really simple way to become lucid in dreams is to ask yourself throughout the day if you are dreaming, and answer yourself genuinely and seriously, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. But keep asking yourself like as often as you can throughout the day, because that habit will carry over into your dreaming, and you'll be dreaming and you'll say, am I dreaming? And you say, yes, I am. And then you can try to stay in the dream if possible, without doing that thing where you're like, look at me, I'm dreaming. Oh, shit, no.
Yeah, the other thing too, I think each sleep cycle is like around 90 minutes or something. And so each sleep cycle, there is an REM. I can't remember how long the REM thing is, but it gets longer throughout the night, right? Okay. So basically, you could have as many as 4 or 5 dreams in 1 8-hour. It's if you're able to get 8 hours. That's the other thing too. Like, make sure you're getting enough rest.
Yeah.
Just in general. But that definitely makes a big difference. I found for me, if I'm not getting enough sleep, then like I definitely find it harder to remember my dreams, or I have crazy dreams.
And deal with other people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wait, what do you mean? Sorry.
No, not getting enough sleep and getting grouchy.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes everything harder. I was going to ask you, Alan, like, how do you find if somebody wanted to do the physical, what am I trying to say? Discipline that you're talking about with like martial arts. How do you find like a good teacher or a good place to learn that's not just, I just feel like there's so many places that just want your money and they're like going to give you some belts if you come often enough and that's it. Like, how do you find like the actual like spiritual side of it or whatever?
Boy, that's a whole can of worms with
okay.
Really, well, exactly what you said is right out of the gate the problem. Most schools, if they're going to be commercially successful, have to really tone down the stuff we're talking about.
Yeah.
They don't get into it too much because parents get offended. Whatever their religious tradition is makes them offended, and they just go off the wire when someone just tries to tell them to relax and watch their breath. And it's like, that has no religious connotations whatsoever. All the traditions do it, so calm down. You're not going to be brainwashed.
Yeah.
But really, I would actually tell people, just go buy some DVDs and really just go on YouTube and watch videos for free.
Okay.
And just kind of research off of whatever you find, like Tai Chi or Qigong. Those are relaxed, calm, moving meditation and will build energy and slow the mind down and deepen your breathing. And then from there, you can springboard into books in your local library or downloading free PDFs or getting used ones for dirt cheap off of like bookfinder.com. And you can get massive amounts of information that various masters have just openly given to people, and they don't really charge anything for it. And you can like easily build a foundation of doing stuff, and then just try to find somebody who's in that area and really just kind of tell them what you want to focus on and say, I don't really care about the belts. I'm more interested in using this to develop myself spiritually. It's not just about the exercise, and already orient them. This is where I want to go. It's not about finding what we call a McDojo, where it's just a belt factory and it's just a fast food version of what you're learning, and there's no depth to it. I know I actually get a lot of crap from people when I orient teaching it in that fashion. I'm old-fashioned. I don't have a big school. I just have an extra room in my apartment, which is why I have a 2-bedroom apartment to teach Buddhism and martial arts from without overhead. So I can approach it in the manner you're talking about and really actually help people.
Yeah. Well, I love that. That's sort of interesting because I just had this preconceived notion that is obviously wrong, that you like had to have a teacher for that practice. But it's like Jeff was saying earlier, like you make up your own kind of, or you find your own ways to practice the things that you know that you want to practice. And that's what you're saying, Alan, is you can also do that for the martial arts too. So that's really heartening. And maybe that's also something we can add to the Eyes Open library that we want to construct. As maybe some more documents that people could use, or pointers along the way, at least, that people could use to kind of teach themselves.
Well, and it's funny, we actually are talking about this because today I got up and went into a local Unitarian Universalist church and joined them for their service. And in October, they're having 2 sessions to where they're having a roundtable discussion about creating your practice and your method of approaching spirituality in a manner you want to. So building your own tradition. So even they realize everybody's kind of got their own way to go at it, which is something that a lot of people attack them for because they're not like strict orthodoxy. And that's kind of what a lot of people want, that whole group think.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. That's like my favorite thing about life. And that's like my whole thing that I'm like trying to push out, is that I feel like everything is ultra personal. You know, every path is ultra personal, and there is no one way that anyone can do anything. There's a billion ways. I love that. So where I want to know where you guys are. Like, who are you today because of your experiences and your understandings of consciousness and the non-locality of consciousness and your dreams and whatnot? We'll start with Jeff.
Who am I today? I don't know. I think probably it's given me, enhanced my alternative perspectives on pretty much everything. So like there's almost never a situation where I'll approach and just see it as the same way everybody else sees it. It's automatic at this point because it's been so many times that weirdness has entered into the equation that I accept weirdness to start with. So it's probably I think if there's one enhancement, I think it makes me a better problem solver. Like in my or living as a technician, like I go and I fix machines that are broken or fix things that are broken. And there's a certain bit of, I guess to overuse the word again, a little bit of intuition. It's like once you start seeing these patterns and you start taking into account the weird stuff that happens. And I got a good mechanic story about weird stuff. We don't need to get into that now. It just it changes your idea of everything. And I think it just makes me personally just maybe more functional.
Yeah. Well, and do you find that you're like almost like the trip guide for people, but in life?
No, I'm like the machine whisperer.
Oh, okay. Wait,
Yeah.
So are you sure we don't need to hear the mechanic story right now?
Well, it's not even my story, but I'll tell it real quick. So I used to work with like this ASC certified mechanic, and this guy had seen everything. And there was a car that kept coming in that would stall mysteriously. So the guys went and changed, everything that would stall in a car, fuel injectors, fuel pump, and they went through a gamut of things. Car kept stalling. So one guy said, "Did you check the gas tank?" And everybody was laughing at him because it's like there's nothing wrong with the gas tank; it holds fuel just fine. Anyway, long story short, I guess the person who'd owned the car lost the gas cap, covered it with a plastic bag at some point. The plastic bag got into the gas tank. So what would happen is when the car would get low on gas, the plastic bag would float down close to where the suction was, cut off the fuel flow, the car would stall. Wait a few minutes, the bag floated back up, car would start up again. No problem. It wasn't an actual problem. But because nobody thought to look for the weird thing,
Yeah.
they went and spent thousands of dollars trying to fix this car, and it turned out to be a plastic bag.
That is so awesome. It's such a good analogy for so many things, but especially life.
Yeah, I say that all the time. It's like, did you look for the plastic bag? But then I got to tell the whole story every time, so I'll stop.
It's like, is your computer on?
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, what do you think, Misha?
For me, I think it's just, and this gets me into trouble a lot. It's just hard to take shit seriously. I think there's like, I don't know if there's like a saying, Alan, I'm not sure if it's like a Buddhist saying, but like where the idea is like take large matters slightly and small matters greatly or something like that. I feel like I end up doing that just because I'm like a lot of like the big problems that like bother a lot of people don't really bother me. Like things like, a couple of years ago I lost my job, right? So then people were just like, "Oh my God, like what are you gonna do? Like you don't have a job and you don't have like $1 million and but I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Like I'll find a job, and I know it like annoys a lot of my friends, stuff like that, because they're like, "We're worried about you," and I'm like, and then just things happen. And I wouldn't even say things happen like it mysteriously happens. I'm working hard to manifest these things, but I think just knowing that you can do that for me like takes a lot of like worry out of stuff,
Yeah.
So it's like I'm not gonna sweat it,
Yeah, you've got like faith and trust in the process, and
Yeah.
I feel the same way. Like the end of this last year, I was laid off, which I forget because I didn't care at all. And people like had that same thing. Everyone was just kind of looking at me like,
"Oh my God,"
are you gonna freak out? When are you gonna freak out? I'm just like, no, it's gonna be fine. It's cool. Like I'm probably gonna get this job over here, and it's gonna be cool. And then I did get that job, and it was fine. But everyone was like, wow, you really like didn't even care. I'm like, no.
And you probably knew beforehand that it was eventuality or something, right?
No, I actually was like, it kind of took me by surprise completely that I was getting laid off. I just like something I just have come to this place where I've realized that everything is always going to be okay. And you can either freak out about things and stress about them and it's still going to work out, or you can not freak out, not stress, and it's going to work out. And I just rather not freak out and stress. Like it's going to work out.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's part of where I'm at because of all of this. What about you, Alan?
Well, I know for myself in realizing the consciousness itself, which even the term denotes something, and there's not really, especially in our tradition, some thing that's there. It's our conception of ourself, which creates ourself. So you don't have to be designated as to become something because of what you've experienced. It's like believing because you heard an echo of a lion, you're going to be eaten at any moment. And that's exactly what our experiences are just echoes of what we've walked in the past. And we don't have to think the forward momentum of the echo has to be the thing it came from. It can be altered in whatever it bounces off of, and we can change ourselves. And I know in the tradition I follow, I'm always taking my mind and like using a scalpel, psychologically slicing it ever smaller. And the more you get in there, you realize there is no there. The Dalai Lama explained this really well. There is no past and present. There is no past and future. There's just a present. But if you look at the present, you say, okay, I'm being here in this very second. Well, there's every other second. Well, there's every fourth of a second, 16th, 32nd. So really, there is no present. So there's none of them. And then your mind screwed right then. You realize, oh, okay. So grasping at any of it's not really going to do me any good. And you just let it go. And you try to do that with everything you've experienced and things in life. But at the same time, like was mentioned, you don't become just this uncaring, pessimistic automaton that just you start meditating or whatever, and you got to throw everybody under the bus, and you don't have relationships and interests and emotional attachments. But you do realize that it's all very ephemeral. So like an ephemeral stream, you drink from it when it's there and you deal with it when it's not there. But either way, worrying about it isn't going to do you any good.
Yeah.
Well, and I love what you're talking about because it reinforces the idea that like you are where you're at, and like any of these kind of ideas and concepts you're going to apply to where you're at. You're not, what you're talking about is like there's this like ultimate level maybe where you really like literally realize that there is nothing but your mind or whatnot, but like also in the everyday you can use it to kind of stress out less or like let things go a little bit more, or right, there's like different levels of access no matter where you're starting.
Yeah.
Am I making sense?
Oh, certainly.
Okay. All right, so let's share something that you guys are grateful for along this path.
For me, my sense of humor.
Nice.
I think I'm funny. I'm an only child, so as long as I entertain myself, then that's good.
I think you're funny too. I'm grateful for your humor. What are you grateful for, Alan?
Well, even people I've had strong emotions with and experiences, even if I no longer know them, the relationships and actually knowing something and learning from that love you've shared with them, even if they've literally died in your arms like I've had people do, it's still an experience that you can grow from. The tree is never going to grow without any water. And just because the water's not pouring at a certain moment doesn't mean you don't want it to rain. So ignoring relationships and not enjoying what you've experienced, not saying the horrible is good, but what good you've had, even though it's gone away, still appreciating it and not longing for well, what could have been? It could have been better. Why didn't you spend an hour with me? And you complain about it the 10 minutes you've had with the person. So being, again, present in the moment and enjoying yourself with the person and whatever's going on, even if it's sitting on a bench enjoying a glass of water while the squirrels run around you, you know, just appreciating the smallest things you can and really loving that and not looking for that high.
Nice. Thank you. What do you think, Jeff?
For me, it's been the, I call it the extra music. I see everything as music. Everything's sound, frequency, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, it's like, you know, if you imagine hearing, you know, Beethoven's Fifth played on like a Casios from the 80s. It's all these synthetic sounds and it sounds kind of horrible. And then all of a sudden being able to hear it with an actual full orchestra. So for me, that's my metaphor. That's how I compare it. So that's what it's added to me. It's added extra music. It's added, enriched just the experience of living, because I understand that there's more to practically everything. I mean, look around the room. It's like, oh, this glass, it's vibrating energy. Oh, mind blown, you know? Something so simple suddenly becomes a hugely fascinating thing, you know? Just the concept that we're all one mind and we're different expressions of the creator. Bam, mind blown again. You know, just a few simple words, but just engaging with those thoughts all the time just creates a lot more music in my life, a lot more melody.
I love that metaphor. That's beautiful. Beautiful thing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm really grateful for my that faith that I think I mentioned before. Like, it's because of the experiences that I've had, it's like literally unshakable, you know. And I was talking with a friend of mine, Elise, who I would love to have on this show someday, that, you know, you could take literally everything from me. It'd be hard. It'd be horrible. I don't want you to. I'm attached to those things. But if I lost, you know, my house and my family and my friends and everything, and I just had myself in the world, I would still know that somewhere inside of me is something like unbreakable, and, you know, that I'm always going to be okay, basically. And that those, anything of value that I had is still exists or is still with me at some level. And so I'm really grateful for that, because I feel like nearly untouchable in a way that is not attached to ego, I think. I hope. And so it's a nice way to feel like nothing can really hurt me. So how do you guys share this with other people? Or do you? Jeff, you seem like you have something to say about it.
Because I don't really. All I do is I try to quote unquote corrupt my nieces and nephews, because they're part of the system, and I got to grab them early. You know what I mean? So I have conversations with like my 9-year-old niece about. She told me the other day that what if the dream world is the real world and this is the fake world? I'm like, I like where this conversation is going. Let's keep talking about it. So, every time the older ones come by, it's, you know, I don't want to talk about whatever you're listening to on the radio, because it's probably crap.
Yeah.
But let's engage in a different conversation. So that's mainly who I talk to.
Well, don't underestimate that. That is totally sharing it with people, and like the ripples of that are going to go out forever. But also, it sounds like you would probably do that for anyone who you felt like you could connect with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What about you, Alan?
Well, having my sangha, which just means congregation, and teaching martial arts, it's done on a regular weekly basis for me. And in my area and online with my YouTube channel, I discuss these topics all the time, write articles. I print out massive amounts of documents and hand them out all the time, no matter where I go, for free. I publish books that I hand out for free. So I constantly circulate as much as I can. And also, as a priest in a tradition, I also counsel as well. So there are people always approaching me about the subject. And I just did a discussion in in June, about the history of the corpse in America, starting from the Civil War forward.
Awesome.
So, you know, there's always topics like that. So there's a large extent of things that I'm trying to always get to the public that they might never hear about and would like to know a little more about, like the world religion's idea of heaven. or what do people say about the soul or the mind and such. And so there's a lot to get out there for people and introduce them to the topic. And then, of course, in the ghost hunting field, which Chris and I have produced multiple videos and was like one of the top rated ghost hunting shows on YouTube for a while, millions of views. We take a different approach to it that is based in Eastern traditions, science, and psychology, and kind of melding them for a newer approach to the idea that it's not just like was mentioned, people saying it's the devil or they're all demons and et cetera, but there's a large, vast amount of the way the mind is manifesting in the variety of realms and introducing people to the various traditions that speak about this, and not just in this kind of dichotomy way of there's good and there's evil. Like, there's not just sunrise and sunset. There's a whole 24-hour period on this planet, and then on other planets there's a 72-hour period. So it's not all just cut and dry in one way. Well,
that's awesome. I've never even heard of your YouTube channel, so why don't you tell us what that is?
Well, it's well, I'll have to actually spell this. It's called Maha Dharmapala. MAHADHARMAPALA. There's
all one word?
Yes, yeah. When you pull it up, you'll see my ugly face on it and realize you've hit the channel with the bald eye. There's just a lot of Buddhist stuff on there and martial arts videos, and another one about some of the Halloween decorations in my town, because we're actually like a giant Halloween town. We have 7 Halloween stores downtown, and it's actually shut off at Halloween, and it's nothing but a whole weekend party with a zombie parade and everything like that. So death and Halloween and spirits is a big part of this town as well. But also there are some videos on meditation, and then the video on my lecture on the history of the corpses there too. So that's awesome. Another one. Yeah, yeah.
And can people find the ghost hunting that you were talking about from your channel as well?
No, I don't have any of those up there. They would have to actually, if you just throw my name into YouTube, whatever ones Chris still has up there are sitting out there to be found. My name is actually, there's only one person in existence that has actually taken the name also. It's like some DJ or something has decided to use my name. Before that, the combination never existed on the planet and still doesn't. So
that happened with my name as well. My pen name. Yeah.
Right. It's very odd. Like when I talk to the government, they're like, what's your name and your social security number? You only need one of them. There's no other ones that exist. So
yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And Misha, what do you do to share with other people about your?
I don't really.
No.
I mean, nothing in particular. I mean, I just kind of like live my life, hopefully the best way I can.
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you because I feel like you're like Jeff, where I feel like you're undervaluing yourself, and I bet you share. I mean, even your presence in this group, I think, has helped a lot of people understand more about themselves and the possibilities of what's out there. You know, just by being you and being a part of this socially. So, and your presence.
But I mean, it's something that I like. Today, I will, you know. It's something like that where I'm like, today I will reach 15 minds, you know?
Yeah. I got you. I personally feel like similarly to you guys, like now I'm doing this podcast. And so I guess I'm trying to reach people in that way. And I've written about some of my beliefs and whatnot in various ways. And I have a website, but otherwise it's like, I just try to connect with people as I interact with them in life in whatever ways I can to try to sort of, it's not like I'm always constantly like trying to manipulate people or whatever, but like when I can, I'm trying to like open minds a little bit at a time. So yeah. So where do you guys hope to end up on this path to, you know, deeper and deeper dives into consciousness? We'll start with Jeff.
Oh, we don't start with Jeff.
Yeah, we keep starting with Jeff.
Can I be a Jedi? Is that a real thing? Can I be an actual, like, functional Jedi? Because that would be freaking awesome.
Hell yeah, that's the goal. That's where you're going.
Yeah. But really, though, there's again, movie nerd come out. Deadpool 2 came out a few months back, right? So there's a character in that movie, and I forgot the character's name. I think it's Domino. Mm-hmm. Anyway, what's her superpower? And her superpower was love. Yeah, and Deadpool's like, that's not a superpower. But when you see her in action, it's like, that's the life I want to live. I want to live such a completely charmed life that every accident misses me. Every time I need a nickel, there's one on the ground. That kind of thing. It's like that, to create that, be in synchrony with the clockwork of the universe. That
is exactly like my level of faith. Because she was just like, no, yeah, it is. And she just like walked into it. And I'm like, that is the shit. That is a superpower.
Crazy.
I love that. What about you, Alan?
Well, for my, I have such a variety of what I focus on that it's really like walking into a library and saying, what are you going to focus on? Well, let's look at the shelf next to me, and then just progress from there, and whatever falls into my lap, falls into my lap. I'm sure there's a reason it's there, no matter what it is. And then I just work with it and just flow with whatever comes in and allows me to progress and grow in whatever manner that I possibly can. In my tradition, we do have specific sets of principles that we try to excel in, that we feel are manifestations of what we call our Buddha nature, or the Tathagata Garbha. And even that term itself denotes a womb, which is an area of birth. And that's why for us, wisdom, pranya, is viewed as a female manifestation, because all things are birthed from it and bringing life forward. So for us, women and men are all equal. We're all Buddhas. We're all enlightened. We just got to realize and work towards it and embrace that and manifest those abilities and qualities in ourselves, no matter what form you're in. Male, female, hermaphrodite, midget, dog, parrot, no matter what ethnicity, language, wheelchair, one arm, a head on a platter. It doesn't matter. The essence inside, like water, just forms to the vessel it's poured into. But when you break the vessel, the water is formless. And it's like Lao Tzu said, the doorway, the window, everything that are openings make the room of value, but the room itself is empty. So how we enter into what we're manifesting is where we really get our value from it. And realizing the emptiness, in that it's not like there's nothing. Emptiness for us in Buddhism actually means the ability for all things to manifest. There's the potentiality of all things.
Wow. I feel like we could have, again, a whole show about just what you just said. But I also I feel like this question is like its own trap, because, it's like, where are you going or where do you hope to end up? But like, if you knew for sure, wouldn't that mean that you are already there? Right? Like, I have no idea where I end up. I don't know. What's your answer, Misha?
Go ahead, Al.
Oh, I was just going to say, you can look at a map all day long and look at a globe, or look at the what we know from Hubble, how big the universe is. But again, you got to walk the distance to get there. So even if you have a destination, getting there is not as important as the whole journey going there, because that's where all the scenery is along the way.
Boom. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you might know where Route 666 is on the map, but unless you drive it with your vehicle, or Route 66, they call it now. They got rid of the 16, but it's a great place that everybody wants to see. But unless you actually get in your car and go there, it's not going to manifest any adventure or experience for you.
True that.
Yeah.
The journey. Heck yeah.
All
right, Misha, where are you going?
Complete destruction of empire and
Yeah.
reintegration of the demiurge and everyone back to the monad.
Such specific goals. See, I need something like that. Because I have no answer to this question, but I like
And it'll
your
be
guys'
done by
answers.
next Wednesday. No.
Yeah, yeah. And then you'll just take like the rest of your life off. I don't know where I'm going. I kind of just trust in the process and hope that I'm headed the right way. But if you guys have to give some final words of wisdom to people that you'd like to set out to the people in the Eyes Open chat that are listening live, or the people on YouTube who are listening live, or the people who are listening later through the podcast Rogueways or on the Corey Sharman website, what would you tell all these possible listeners?
I would say for those who are aware, be patient with those who aren't. Like, you know, kind of help them along a little bit, you know.
I like it. Yeah. What do you think, Alan?
Well, if I could, I'd like to quote a passage about our internal essence, like what I said we called our Buddha nature. One great teacher named Dubjin Rinpoche said about our nature in not limiting our potential, no words can describe it, no example can point to it. Being reborn over and over does not make it worse, and being released from suffering doesn't make it better. It has never been born, it has never ceased, it has never been liberated, it has never been diluted, it has never existed, it has never non-existed, it has no limits at all, it does not fall into any of categories.
It's like a tongue twister for your mind.
Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Certainly.
All right, Jeff, what are you going to say to the people?
I would say to the people that you are more than the sum of your parts. We're all gods and goddesses. We're all capable of making change, not just in ourselves, but out in the world. Accept that and believe it, because that's real life. That's real. Not this. Everything else is illusion. That's the only thing that's real. That.
Beautiful. And because of that, you can have ultimate faith, right?
Yes.
You're always going to be okay, and you're always going to be on the path, and you're always going to be moving forward.
Absolutely.
All right. Any last burning desires that you guys have, some idea that you wanted to share, some thoughts or a story that you want to tell people before we go?
Not really. I got about like 1,000 dreams I can go off on hours about. But
Yeah, exactly.
I know. I was like, we could just have a show where we all just share like our favorite
What's your
dreams and what
weirdest
we learned
dream?
from them. That would be fun. Maybe we'll do that one sometime too. All right. Well, then we're going to say goodnight. Friends at home and everywhere. This has been your analog, electric, concentric dose of wisdom. According to these three badasses, the dreamer, Misha. Misha, thank you for being here.
You.
The lover, Jeff. Jeff, thank you for being here. And the thinker, Alan. Alan, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
One thing that I've learned is that the more that I know, the more that I know that I don't know. And someone really smart said that way before I ever did. And I stole it from them. But wherever scientism and materialism takes society, their inbuilt hubris of believing that what they already know is true, and that the totality of what they can measure and prove is the totality of what is real and true, is the hubris that will ultimately cause the failure and destruction of that paradigm. We cannot be sure what it is that underlies everything that exists, but the mystery of consciousness is a tantalizing start to exploring this realm, and our dreams can be the keys that unlock ever deeper understandings of ourselves and our surroundings. Even those that don't dream traditionally have access to the non-local consciousness that animates all of us and can traverse those spaces in other ways. There are infinite doors to the truth, and these have been only just a few that we've shared here tonight. So join us next week as we discuss mind control with guests as yet to be determined. So if you would like to join us on that panel, you can email me at corysharman@gmail.com. Corey is spelled weirdly, Quorri, and Sharman is Scharmyn. And while you're at it, you can subscribe to the Corey Sharman YouTube or visit the site at corysharman.com or at rogueways.org. And you can subscribe to the Rogue Ways podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or any other podcast app that you love. And I love you all. And until next week, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Good night.